Welcome to UBC Commission, organized and together with Ministry conference. And I think we have to have very interesting opening speech. And I would like to invite Mr. Poots, Minister of Regional Development and Environment, to start our beautiful conference. Mr. Poots, the floor is yours.
I was being warmed up. I will try to be as interesting as Gunnar says. First of all, I'm really glad to be today here. It's, I think, it's a conference on the issue which is very important indeed. We live in the time where the main competitors, main competitiveness factors now lie within cities. Cities competing on the global arena, cities competing on regional arena, trying to attract talents, trying to create development base, and this is a new type of competition where there is need to understand what are the factors that they're pushing forward, which areas will develop, which will not be developed, who will be the development centers of the future. And in that sense, especially looking at the small and medium cities, we live in an area where those are the cities that we actually very much look upon, knowing that if you want to develop the country, you develop the territory, you can not only concentrate on bigger cities, attracting global talent and being a part of the global fight. You need to have small, medium cities participating in this competition. But from the other point of view, these are also the cities that most probably feel the squeeze the most. The bigger cities want to attract better talents. They have some more opportunities, and they are sometimes have less pressure to specialize and to create a specialized base. They can attract talents from everywhere and create new opportunities. For small and medium cities, it's a question of whether you are good enough. And this is a very hard thing to understand. That's also a question of both a strategic side, what are development opportunities for those cities. That's also a strategic side, what are the role of the city in the region, in the country, in the region, how they work together with bigger cities to create more added value for the people, for the area. And this is, I think, from that point of view, this conference is right at the time and has the right also topic to discuss. And I'm very happy that you will do it today. I welcome you. I hope you will have a very good conference today, and you will have very good results, good discussions, and we will move forward with a better strategy for small and medium cities in this Baltic Sea region. Thank you very much.
There is not so often in a WhatsApp conference, and we do have two ministers. And today we have a privilege to have Minister of Transportation of Latvia, Mr. Tāls Linkaits. And I would like to say also one secret about Tāls Linkaits was also for many years chairing and organizing all events in the Baltic Sea region. And he was head of UBC administration unit. WhatsApp, sorry, WhatsApp. Okay, sorry, yeah, Tālis, floor is yours. Yeah.
Hello, dear friends and colleagues. It's good to see you in this very nice WhatsApp event. My good friend and colleague, Swedish Ambassador Jan Lundin, used to tell a story about two Swedish villages that in the 19th century they were both offered to have a railway line. and an inhabitants of one village said, well, we are living in so nice surroundings and it's so beautiful. Why should we destroy our nice and beautiful community? And another said, okay, let's try. Let's have a railway station. Let's have a railway line. And nowadays there is still one small village and there is metropolis. So it means every day when you make decisions, they could be strategic decisions for your community, for your city, for a long-term future. And therefore it's good to have vision, it's good to have strategies, how to achieve the vision, and good to have a lot of friends around the Baltic Sea who might suggest or might tell you how in other cities, in other countries, in other communities, these issues have been discussed and solved. And today I'm very glad that we have this very nice and dense discussion with a lot of good examples, and I hope these good examples will bring you some food for thought and food for decision making, so that your community, your city, your region and country becomes more and more competitive in this quite competitive surrounding of the global and regional competition. I wish you all good discussions and also enjoy nice weather after the discussion here in Riga. Thank you.
Now I have to also have an official speech and introduce myself. My name is Gunnar Sanciņš. I'm chairman of WASAB. The first time I was a chairman in 2008. This is my second term, I would like to say. And I made calculation, maybe after 10 years it could be the third, because I still, till the pension age, have limited time. Today I'm really happy that we are discussing, I would like to say, a very important topic, which is small and medium-sized cities. And we are in the Baltic Sea region are, I would like to say, on one hand, very different, but on the other hand, we are very similar. And if we are talking about WASAB itself, I think it's a good platform. It's a good platform for future development. We see a number of different interactions between the cities. And I'm happy then for this conference. We are also having, I would like to say, a very beautiful building, which was on a previous slide from Tartu, which I would like to say is one of the good symbols how to develop small and medium-sized cities. And I'm very happy that the end of the corner is the deputy mayor of Tartu also presented today. But WASAB started activities in 1992. I would like to say is one of the strongest cooperation platform in Europe, connecting more than 10 states, because usually regarding the 11 states, we are having always discussion regarding Belarus and Norway, which was at the beginning. Today, I think the most important thing in Latvian presidency, which ends just yesterday night, and the president took over Danish presidency, which will be run by my colleague Gitte. But I think it's very important for Latvian case start negotiation regarding small and medium-sized cities, how we are living, why we are living, how we are connected to the capital cities, how we are connected to the world. And I hope today all discussions on this will also support each national government, because number of countries today are willing to making some public reforms, including Latvia. And those experience how to live in a small and medium-sized city is very important also for national government. Therefore, I would like to say thank you indeed, ministers and also friends of Brussels. Anna, thank you very much indeed for being here with us today. And also from Luxembourg, Mr. Rause, I'm very pleased to welcome you also in our capital city, Riga. But there will be a very short video on WhatsApp just after my presentation. And thank you very much indeed for your participation, and I hope active participation today. Thank you.
Vision and Strategies Around the Baltic Sea is the first macro-regional collaboration in Europe with a common vision and joint actions among ministries on spatial planning and territorial development. VUSUB cooperates with other initiatives and ensures knowledge transition outside the BSR. It also acts as the horizontal action spatial planning coordinator within the EU strategy for the BSR for land-based spatial planning and co-coordinates maritime spatial planning jointly with HALCOM. The first vision created a spatial structure towards an integrated BSR. This document was the first to voice a need for a fast train connection along the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea. Today it has grown into Rail Baltica project. VUSUB generated the first sprouts of expanding spatial planning offshore. Since 2009, long-term perspective guides VUSUB work on 3 key areas: urban networking and urban-rural cooperation, accessibility, and maritime spatial planning. VUSUB supports countries and ensures experience exchange through workshops and conferences, monitoring city development, and follow-up cooperation projects on urban development and urban-rural linkages. VUSUB monitors internal and external accessibility of the BSR and cooperates to encourage fast, reliable, and environmentally efficient transport connections, promotes a sustainable and integrated energy network, discusses and observes the potential of TEN-T network for regional development. To carry out the actions of the long-term perspective, a HALCOM VUSUB MSP working group was established. It has drafted a common regional framework and agreed on joint principles for coherent MSP. This laid the groundwork for transboundary consultations to conduct open and transparent cross-border dialogue, an ecosystem-based approach as an overarching principle, an MSP data structure to ensure data availability and coherence. Cooperation projects provide added value to achieve a well-integrated and coherent BSR. Vision and strategies for a thriving region.
Hey. So hello, welcome everyone. My name is Laura and I'm taking over this event because I'm going to be the moderator of this event. So once again, I want to give you a warm welcome to this event for those who are in this room and also for those who are following us on live stream. So we have had very nice opening speeches, but there's one more left before we start with our conference. And now I want to give the floor to Stefan Eriksson, who is Director of Nordic Council of Ministers Office in Latvia, because this office has a big role also in this conference. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Augsti godātie ministri, ekscelences, dāmas un kungi, man vajadzētu runāt latviski, lai trenētos. I should be practicing my Latvian today, but luckily for me and maybe for you, it's an international conference, so I can speak English. I want to say that representing the Nordic Council of Ministers office here in Latvia, we are very pleased to cooperate with VUSUB on arranging this conference and helping to secure a strong Nordic presence. The theme is indeed, as has been said already by speakers of today's conference, is very relevant to the whole Baltic and Nordic region. challenges of small and medium-sized cities. This is an area where our office also has been engaged lately in different events that promote Nordic-Baltic cooperation and exchange of experience. Within the Nordic cooperation, we have a specialized institution dealing with regional development issues, Nordregio, with headquarters in Stockholm. Apart from working with research and publications, like this one, State of the Nordic Region, that some of you may have seen, in recent years, they have also been organizing a yearly forum called Nordregio Forum that focuses on different aspects of regional development. In 2017, the theme was Nordic cities, connecting the urban and the rural. In 2018, it was changing ruralities. And this year, the forum will take place in Reykjavik, in Iceland, in the end of November, on the theme Skills for Resilient Regions. So you're all welcome to join for that forum. I will end here and wish you all an interesting, productive conference. I'm sure that an exchange of Baltic and Nordic experience on how to make our cities more competitive and sustainable will be rewarding to us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. So now, since we have opened the conference, we can move to the most important part, meaning the conference itself. But before we start, I just wanted to say a couple of words as an introduction as well. So every city has its own story, and it's a different story. But there are a lot of things that cities have in common, and these are challenges that small and medium-sized cities are facing nowadays. And this conference is devoted to talk about these challenges, to talk about good practices, and particularly to talk about how small and medium-sized cities and towns are contributing to strengthening competitiveness of small and medium-sized cities in an aspect of Baltic Sea region and also Europe as whole. So this is the final WASAP event in the Latvian chairmanship. Before we move to Denmark, as I heard before. And what the one thing that WASAP does is it provides a forum for exchange of know-how and good practice. And this conference is about this. We are going to talk about good practice, we are going to discuss, and we are going to share, and we are going to learn as much as possible. So the main task for each of us in this room is to make sure that we are active, we ask a lot of questions, we think, we focus, and we spend a good time here. So by the end of the time, by the end of the day, when we go home, we can say to ourselves that it was a well-spent time, and there were many things that we learned, and at least a couple of things that we can take home, adapt, test, and implement them in our own small towns and medium-sized cities. So, just as a bit of technical information before we move forward. This conference is divided in 3 parts. And the first part is devoted to talk about more global aspects of competitiveness of small and medium-sized cities in Baltic Sea region. Then we will have a short coffee break, just long enough so you can enjoy nice weather outside today, but short enough so you can still stay focused on this conference. Then we will move to the second part of the conference, and the second part of the conference will be devoted to talk about more local aspects, and we will have a lot of good practice examples from different cities from Baltic Sea region. And then the third part, and then again we will have a short coffee break, and then we will move to the third part, and third part will be panel discussion. We'll have vivid discussions, and it will be also opportunity for all of you to engage in this topic. So, a couple of more technical things. Because we are live streaming, so I invite everyone, speakers and also those who are asking questions, to use a microphone, because otherwise people who are following us on live stream, they won't be able to hear what you are saying. So let's make sure that we make this event nice and possible also for people who are not here today. Then, as you have noticed, we have a photograph here in the room. So in case you don't want that your pictures with you are published online, just approach some of the organizers or myself in the coffee break, and we'll make sure that that doesn't happen. Also, the last thing that before we move forward is if you check now your badges with the program, you will see that this conference is finishing at 3 p.m. But there is a surprise for everyone because there is a hidden treasure there. There will be a workshop organized on I'm gonna check precise name of it. So the name of the workshop is Workshop on Territorial Scenario scenarios for Baltic Sea region for 2050. So there will be registration opened for it during the lunchtime. So make sure that you don't leave this conference without participating in this workshop, because it's going to be great and your voice is needed there to make sure that the Baltic Sea region is developing in a way how we all want it. So now it's time to start the conference, and with no further ado, I would like to invite the first speaker. It's Pavel Svoboda. He's a deputy head of European Political Strategy Center from European Commission, and he's going to talk about Europe in global perspective, about trends and priorities. Welcome. Please applause.
Thank you very much, Laura and Gunnar. So I was invited to speak about global trends, and I was really happy about this invitation, because the conference is about small and medium-sized cities. But just like this decision about whether to have the railway or not to have the railway, it is equally essential to understand whether one's growth strategy, development strategy is in line with global trends or is not in line with global trends. So that's what I will speak about briefly in the coming 13 minutes, as I can see. So I want to take you through 4 mega trends that we at the European Commission look at more closely. The first has to do with digitalization and technology, the second with climate change and environment, the third with demography and society, and finally the fourth with an increasingly multipolar world. So this is one of my favorite graphs, because it really captures what is the essential knowledge about humanity's way forwards in the past 200,000 years. And I said 200,000 years because if you go back that long way, then economically most of our history over the centuries has been totally irrelevant until economically, I say. I mean, nothing to say about politics, culture, and all that, until the Industrial Revolution, when it all starts to shoot off through the roof. And we are still there. We are still in this expansionary phase of technology, and we need to decide what's going to happen next. Do we keep on going, or do we stop somewhere, pause, and try to redistribute the fruits of that spectacular growth? So technology is very much at the heart of human progress. And what we see in the current phase is a convergence of technologies. Some people call it the new industrial revolution, but essentially it's about the fact that a number of digital or digitally enabled technologies converge. So you have internet, obviously, Internet of Things, you have open software, you have cloud computing, and all that. And all these technologies are used for a variety of purposes, and they're applied in sectors such as agriculture for precision agriculture, for precision planting. They are applied in medicine for predictive gene therapies, or in the financial industry. The financial industry is undergoing a genuine revolution because it is going technological big way. The saying in the financial services industry at the moment is invest in tech or die. Some of the budgets of big banks, including the ones in the regions, are bigger than R&D budgets of technology firms. So much investment goes into this area. Now, unfortunately, we're not doing great globally. This picture, I think, is quite telling because it shows the relative size of internet platforms, and it's clear that it's a binary race between the United States and China, with us in Europe somewhere in between. I mean, platforms don't tell the entire story. We can always say that there is lots of activity in between in Europe, but I think we should take that message to heart. Equally, we should take the message to heart that in some of the emerging technologies, such as electric cars on the left-hand side here, or batteries, it's also not necessarily Europe that leads the way. I mean, China has definitely far more electric car production right now, or battery cell production, than we do. And again, nothing to be particularly paranoid about. It's something to take to heart. When it comes to employment, it's clear that technology has disruptive effects as well. And what we have seen over the past 2 decades is that highly skilled jobs have increased, and also low-skilled jobs have increased, and everything in between has been under pressure. So that's the same pretty much trend in Europe, in Japan, and in the United States. Therefore, it pays off to invest in highly skilled or at least medium non-routine jobs, and then deal with the problem of displacement in the medium routine and low-skilled jobs. Europe, in particular, faces the pressure of cyber resilience. What you see here is the prediction that the number of smart homes will increase tenfold between 2016 and 2021. And that's great news, except that we also need to make sure that the cybersecurity of that whole new system emerging is ensured. Second mega trend has to do with climate change and environment. And there is unfortunately bad news with respect to last year, namely emissions reached record levels. And what is worse, our investments in renewables globally failed for the first time in 20 years, while investments in carbon-powered energy production have increased. So we're going in the opposite direction to Paris. We have high ambitions. We have this spectacular movement of the youth. On the left-hand side, Fridays for Future student-led demonstrations around the world, mushrooming literally across the continents. But I'm afraid to say it's not producing yet the type of policy result which is needed. And the level of the rhetoric, I think we got it perfectly right. At the level of commitment, Paris is the answer, but we are going in the opposite direction to Paris at the moment. And of course, the way to go towards Paris is also by means of protecting Europe's industrial capacity. And we do have competitive advantages in the renewable energy sector, such as the ones mentioned here. We have some of the largest companies globally on the New Energy Global Innovation Index. Some of them are based in the region. In fact, you will recognize a lot of names with the blue flag. Of course, we also need to pay attention to carbon-intensive regions as they transform, because there are about 237,000 jobs directly linked to carbon-intensive industries, whether it is coal mining or whether it is power production. And you will also see that a lot of these regions are in the Baltic Sea area. Third mega trend, demography and society. Well, there the message is that we are aging fastest as the continent. So the median age in Europe in 2030 will be 45. And that will by far outbeat anything any other continent will have reached. I mean, Japan is not a continent, so that's the only consolation for us, that Japan is aging a little bit faster than we are, but otherwise we take the trophy. And this will have consequences. Of course, the demographic trends globally are great news. A lot of people are lifted out of poverty. There is this spectacular rise of the middle class as well in Asia, in Europe, in Asia as well. There's India and there's China at the same time. The rise of India is really still to come, and this will boost the middle class globally. We have some of the most equal societies around the world, although the situation in the Baltic Sea region is somewhat more diverse. You will see Latvia and Estonia on the right-hand side of this spectrum with more inequalities, and you will see Denmark and Sweden on the left-hand side of this particular graph. Now, I said that this demographic aging is going to be a challenge. Well, if we don't have immigration, that we will lack about 50 million jobs on our labor market going towards 2030. So we have a choice. Either we accept immigration, including through legal means, which would be important for our competitiveness as well, or we face the consequences of this shrinking labor markets. And of course, sustainability of the welfare systems is also at stake, because now we have 4 people working for each pensioner, And we're moving towards a situation in which we'll have 2 working for 1 pensioner in 2060. Well, that's a huge shift. And there is a bit of psychology behind all this. An Asian professor, Kishore Mahbubani, based in Singapore, tends to say that optimism is in the East and pessimism is in the West. And there is something to it when you look at the answer to this particular question, which is, will your children be better off than you are? And Asians tend to say yes, 56, 58%, and Europeans tend to have no, second thoughts, 24 only, think that the children will be better off. The last mega trend has to do with an increasingly multipolar world. So this is more or less the situation as we speak. The OECD countries' share of the global economy going down, South and East Asia and Pacific going sharply up. There is a massive power shift in economic terms towards Asia. That's one of the determining factors of today's realities. And that means new institutions and platforms. 5 years ago, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank was created. There was a bit of a struggle among European countries to coordinate the positions, whether we should join or not join. Belt and Road Initiative, of course, is big, and also the Eurasian Economic Union, just to give examples. There are security issues to respond to. Here you have R&D budgets for defense spending in the US. That's the biggest block. China, that's the smaller one in purple, and then the EU and Russia in the lower corner. There are pressures on our systems of governance. The Freedom House measures what goes on with respect to democracy, and their message isn't exactly reassuring. We have seen 13 consecutive years of decline in global freedoms, they argue. The only reassuring message I could have found was in the survey of the Economist Intelligence Unit, that argues that this year the trend has changed. And we are, for the first time in a decade, seeing the strengthening of democracy. And this is due to only one factor, namely higher participation. And I think when we look back at the European Parliament elections, there is something to it. There is definitely this willingness of people to engage and participate. And this accounts for the strengthening of democracy. There are also distortions of the level of the global level playing fields that we need to have an answer for. Here you see sectors in which China distorts that level playing field. There's only one area, that's real estate investment, where we have higher barriers than China has in Europe. And in all the other areas, it's the other way around. And that will slowly come to an end by focusing, as we tend to do nowadays most often, on what do people want. So what are the concerns and challenges according to Europeans? And the message here is quite unequivocal that immigration continues to be the top one challenge, followed by terrorism, which has fallen down sharply, but is still number 2. And then it's the state of public finances. All the economic concerns come third. Climate change is there, but it's not all that prominent as we would have expected. And my last message will be about the missions for the future that the Commission has put forward in its communication before the European Parliament elections. And there we speak about 5 Europes, protective, competitive, fair, sustainable, and influential. They do relate to the megatrends that I mentioned. And also, irrespective of who becomes the next president of the European Commission, who are the new leaders in the European Union, I think their priorities will lie somewhere between these 5 missions. All 5 will need to be answered for. The emphasis might have been different depending on who the person is. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We have time for one quick question or reflection in case anyone from the room has one. Feel free to ask it now. Okay, I see that we are still warming up. That's okay, but I'm going to ask the question. Very good, thank you. So you said that like Europe is not leading the way.
Yes.
So do you think there is any chance that we will ever lead the way, or do we have to lead the way? In fact, what's your personal opinion?
I think we have to lead the way if we want to ensure our lasting prosperity. Because to be honest, either you treat value creation with all the seriousness it deserves, or you don't. And if you don't, then you have a shrinking pie to share. I'm not sure this is exactly what the Europeans want. And second, the second main reason is that we, I assume, want the world to be roughly based on our norms and values. And if we don't lead the way, then it's surely others who are lining up to take that role from us. But I'm not pessimistic at all. What I want to say is more that we are under pressure, and in some areas more than in others. I think we have to get a grip on a number of things, including technology. I think technology will have to be big in this new cycle, which is just beginning. But there are lots of areas where we lead. The renewable energy sector is just one example. And it's really that we should build our strength on the assets that we have, rather than try to duplicate what the others have done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for an interesting presentation. Once again, big applause. So now we will move to the next speaker, and I'm very happy to invite here Ilona. She's the director of ESPON EGTC, and I'm gonna mention what is that. ESPON EGTC is European Grouping on Territorial Cooperation, and I just want to mention also that Ilona was a former Deputy State Secretary of the Minister of Environmental Protection and Regional Development in the matters of regional development. So welcome back to Latvia. And Ilona is going to talk about promoting competitiveness in small and medium-sized cities in the context of future European territorial development perspective. Welcome, the floor is yours. Please applause.
Yes, thank you very much for introducing me, and good morning, everybody. At the start of the conference, Gunnars mentioned that I'm a guest from Luxembourg. But in fact, Riga, of course, is my hometown, and I'm very happy to come back every time when I'm invited, every time when I have an opportunity to be back here and to enjoy our beautiful city. Today, I would like to share with you some observations and also policy advice from ESPON program that is related to promoting competitiveness of small and medium-sized cities in the context of the future European territorial development perspective. So now in my presentation, we will be moving from a global perspective to a more European perspective. And I will have 4 key messages in my presentation. If you are not patient enough to listen until the end, of course, I will try to make it as brief as possible. So nowadays, first of all, small and medium-sized cities, they cannot neglect European development trends and perspectives. They have to have this outward-looking vision and an understanding of overall European territorial development trends and perspectives, and they have to take those into account when designing and implementing the development policies. This is message number 1. Second message that is, of course, I think for Europe quite positive. Small and medium-sized cities will remain as the backbone of the European spatial structure. So that will not change, according at least to the observations of our researchers of working with ESPON. Another message is that what we need to take into account is that resources will become scarcer. We will have less resources in many ways, less investment resources, less human resources that are related to our demographic trends and projections. And this will have to be also taken into account in adapting our policies to the new realities. And this also leads me to then the last and also main message of my presentation today. The scarcity of the resources and the other trends that I will be talking about justify the need to act jointly. So I will advocate for the need to promote more cooperation among places. And small and medium-sized cities as well as other places in Europe, increasingly need to think about territorial cooperation and the need to develop joint strategies, investment plans, and also promote overall development through more territorial cooperation. So let me start with some key trends and challenges as we see them from the side of ESPON. Our researchers have just finalized one research activity that is called European Territorial Reference Framework. This is for you to mention if you're interested in looking at the different territorial development scenarios, projections, and also policy advice for the future of Europe from the territorial development perspective. And the two key messages, the two key challenges that our researchers point at for Europe are firstly that Europe is still fragmented, and this has several this reveals in several ways, as a political discontent, as a social and economic disparities, and also from a more positive perspective through the cultural diversity. And secondly, European places become increasingly interdependent. They become increasingly interdependent. We see a more network-based, organized spatial structure. We see that places become increasingly interconnected. They become increasingly interdependent, linked with each other. And this, of course, points at the need to address the development challenges and opportunities jointly and actually act together. This also leads to another reality in Europe. What we see is the territorial, as we say, call it territorial mismatch between functions and jurisdictions. Basically, nowadays, administrative structures, they do not match the functional realities of movements of people, goods, and services. And this, again, creates the need to design policies and to design implementation tools and also implement the policies at a more functional geographical scale, because nowadays one administrative unit is not anymore capable of dealing with all the contemporary and future development challenges, acting alone. So the right scale of intervention from the point of view of ESPON are different functional areas at the scale of at the cross-border scale, at transnational scale, at the scale of functional urban areas, at the scale of macro regions, at the scale of, I don't know, mountainous areas, coastal areas, border areas, you name it. But in any case, these have to be very seriously considered and have to, the thinking around policy design has to expand beyond thinking along administrative borders. This is a very important message for us. And we already see that this practice is emerging, it is developing. We see emerging functional areas at different geographical scales and increasing practice of designing policies, designing implementations tools at those different functional scales. But this is not a practice yet everywhere. In the proposals for the future of cohesion policy, this functional approach has been strengthened, and member states, regions, and cities have an opportunity in the next programming period to employ this functional approach. It is a pity, from my perspective and also from the perspective of ESPON, that this approach is still more or less voluntary, a free choice of member states to do it or not. We believe that in the draft regulations, these principles of developing, implementing policies at functional scales could be presented in a much stronger way, but still there's enough good practice to build upon, to expand, to learn from each other, as was already mentioned. And we believe that the evidence that ESPON has on these developments can also be helpful in that sense. Another key challenge that I would like to point out that also has to be considered seriously by everybody, including, of course, the small and medium-sized cities, is the quality of government. The quality of government, the quality of governance, and it is, of course, as we see, according to the data of University of Gothenburg, it is increasing, the quality of governance is increasing. And we see improvements in the eastern part of Europe, but still, as you see, Europe is fragmented also according to this indicator, and this is also a very important precondition to make sure that all investment that we make in the framework of European policies, of national policies, brings the necessary results. And also the studies that have been conducted by the Commission clearly pointed out that quality of government is a key precondition to make sure that investment is efficient. Otherwise, we can continue investing and we can continue investing and we will continue building roads and improving all the different infrastructure and networks. This will not bring us to the envisioned future and achieving the objectives. Another key trend that I would like to point out, that I also mentioned at the start of my presentation, is that we are faced with the challenge of shrinking cities and also the challenge of shrinking rural areas. So the usual thing that we used to talk about is that population is moving outside of rural areas, and according to the projections of ESPON, the population by 2050 in rural areas can decrease by around 2 million, by 2 million, or 2.3 million, if I remember correctly the data. At the same time, we also see that urban shrinkage is a serious problem, is a phenomenon that we are facing in Europe and will be facing in the future due to suburbanization and other shifting spatial morphology that serve as a significant driver of shrinkage, and especially this is observed in EU 13 member states of Eastern Europe. It has different nature. As you can see, there are places where this is a more continuous shrinkage. There are places where this is also a more periodic phenomena, and this does not necessarily coincide in the case of cities with economic decline, because we see that, of course, cities and their development are very closely related to the developments of the hinterlands, and even if people move outside of the cities, they still keep their jobs in the city. So in the case of urban areas, of course, this is not the same, whereas in the case of rural areas, of course, the demographic decline in many of the places and the shrinking of rural areas in many cases lead also to weaker economic projections, to more risks of negative economic development trends. When we were asked the question by one of our presidencies, former presidencies, whether it is possible to reverse shrinkage, well, in the case of rural areas, we clearly say no. What we can do is we can adapt. We can redesign policies, we can rethink our strategies and investments to, as we say, regrow, greener, smarter, smaller, and basically adapt to the new realities. And it is still possible to ensure sufficient development with smaller resources, but you need to act wiser, and you need to engage in more cooperation. You need to join forces with other places to make sure that you have sufficient critical mass of resources for your development. If we look at employment and knowledge economy, just also an interesting piece of data that we have within ESPON that also is food for thought. If we look at migration patterns, we see sending and receiving regions, and we see again quite a clear east-west divide, and also divide with the southern Europe. And this is very closely related to the number of people employed in science and technology as a percentage of active population. So there's also a clear linkage between the development and the level of development of the knowledge economy preconditions and also the out-migration. So this is also something that I believe also Anna will be talking about shortly, and this is a very important indicator also of the need to increasingly promote knowledge economy, of course also in the case of small and medium-sized medium-sized cities. Another worrying trend is the existence of inner peripheries. They at the moment cover 45% of the entire European territory. They are disconnected places in many different ways. Physically, relationally, economically, they are places left behind, abandoned places, you name it. They are the ones that also cause some political repercussions, so to say. And this is a very worrying trend that also has to be considered. And this means that also in the case of small and medium-sized cities, what we need to do is that we need to increase connectivity of those places, because many of those places are small and medium-sized cities. So increasing connectivity, acting jointly. And what is even more worrying, there are more areas risking to become inner peripheries if service provision deteriorates further. So this is also something that needs to be considered as a serious worrying trend. There are many drivers of change that will also continue to impact future projections of the different places. I will not go into depth. You can have a look after the conference. They are technological drivers, environmental, social, political, and economic, and there are many of them that will define the future of the different places in Europe, and this is related to developing more fluid societies, to more environmental risk, to the efficiency of governments, as I mentioned, to more networked economies, and also the development of new technologies. So to sum up, key spatial development impacts in Europe, as I mentioned, European urban structure will remain based on relatively small cities. There will be a more intensive renewal process linked to the smart city vision and renaturalization of cities, if you can also read what it means. Then depopulation of sparsely populated areas and old industrial centers will be a trend to consider. There will be concerns, and there are already concerns related to people living in places left behind at all scales. And also one other challenge related to developing more specialized physical networks. Now, moving on to territorial scenarios, if we move from the challenges to what to do, I already made the point, so I will not delve into that for a long time. Our researchers suggest to move towards the scenario from the muddling through scenario where we are now, with all our fragmentation, with all the discrepancies that we are faced, towards the scenario of enabling cooperation. And this scenario is promoting the idea of more cooperation among places, enabling cross-border, local, interregional, transnational, functional areas, developing multi-level governance solutions, and basically involving places in policies where they plan their development jointly and where they implement their programs also jointly through joint investment. And according to the estimation of our researchers, this can bring up to until 2035 0.2% additional annual average GDP increase, and this will reveal in higher trade flows, higher decrease in non-tariff barriers, higher trust within among countries, also higher quality of government and stronger cooperation networks. And finally, if we look at policies and good practices, just a quick sum up in terms of what to do. So, promoting competitiveness of small and medium-sized cities nowadays requires, firstly, taking into consideration the two key territorial challenges, which is the fragmentation and the interdependencies and mismatch between administrative and functional areas. So, as I said, places cannot neglect each other. They cannot plan their policies in isolation from each other, but they have to purposefully look around and see what are the ways how to promote their development together with the others. Adjusting policies and strategies to key megatrends, technological progress, economic globalization, social disparities, migration, climate change, all those things. Addressing issues of territorial cooperation and governance of new functional areas. So basically, new planning, governance, investment practices have to be based and have to be planned at the scale of functional areas. And Addressing the challenges of the remoteness, of abandonedness requires promoting connectivity, and this is not only physical connectivity, but also economic and relational connectivity. And finally, it also requires improving and thinking about improving the quality of local and regional governance. And of course, as ESPON, we always advocate for place-based responses for future policies, meaning that we advocate for the need to address all these different challenges in an integrated manner on the basis of local and regional integrated strategies at the scale, as I mentioned, of functional areas, supporting by developing and implementing supporting tools for integrated development that help you to design joint investment, to employ a multi-fund approach, all the different nice tools that are already offered in the draft regulations. The only question is whether and how we use all these tools that are already available to us. Cooperation within functional areas brings a number of benefits. If this is employed at the level of planning, governance, and investment, we can mobilize more resources for more results. We can achieve critical mass for competitiveness. Places can, at the same time, specialize and at the same time diversify. We avoid overlapping wasteful investment. We ensure more visibility and, of course, wider spillover effects of everything that we are doing. We just completed a study on cross-border public services, just as one illustration of the different practices, planning and investing at the scale of cross-border areas as one type of functional areas. Very interesting study. I encourage you to have a look at it. 579 examples of cross-border public service provision in Europe. We see that this practice is concentrated in the central part of Europe, basically along the borders of EU 15 member states. Mostly they deal with environmental protection, civil protection, and disaster management or transport. So basically the practice has been, is already developed. And this is just one example of how to. And then we also have other good practices of, for example, an EGTC hospital that was established in 2010, a cross-border hospital providing services to Spanish and French citizens in a remote area of Pyrenees. Then we also have an example of the joint FDI attraction in Greater Copenhagen, where also several authorities are engaged and work together with an aim to remove cross-border barriers for FDI attraction. And we see that they are doing well. They are building they are acting in the niche markets, capitalizing on region's strengths, life sciences, clean and green tech. And the last example is knowledge economy, where we also have experiences, Brabantstadt Urban Network, Baltic Science Link, where again, cities are engaged in a network, and through cooperation practice, and through combining resources, they increase their critical mass for action and achieving more results. You can find all this on the ESPON website. If you want to hear more, please speak to me. I will help you to get more information. And this was just a very short insight of everything that we have within ESPON. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Ilona later will also be participating in our discussion in our third part, so there will be a chance to ask questions of her also later. Now we will move to the next speaker, and I'm very happy to invite Janne Antikainen. He is a design director in the Regional Development Consultancy, MDI Public, and he's going to talk about challenges and opportunities for the Baltic Sea region in global perspective. Welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Applause. Thank you. And thanks for this invitation. It's great to be in the WhatsApp family. I have an opportunity to have been here before a few times, and I think along like 22 years or something, and this has been a very good experience all along the way, and hopefully for the next 25 years as well. And I'll talk about the challenges and the opportunities. I look at the global trends, like Pavel did also already. Then I go to the national level, just to go through countries very quickly in the Baltic Sea region, that how they have actually adopted these policies, what are the key words, and then I come back also to the ideas that how should the small and medium-sized cities tackle these challenges and take good side of the opportunities. And basically, my important lessons are that the trends, whatever they are, there is two sides to the coins. There is always the positive possibility, or the challenge can be very negative for development. So it's very important for all players to take stand. How do they want to treat these trends? Take aging. It can be, of course, demanding for your services, but it can be a perfect living lab for any aging functions or know-how. Another thing is that this is strongly applying knowledge in the small and medium-sized cities. They are not necessarily the strongest knowledge hubs in the world, but they are the best places that are close to the actors. And that's the third point also. The small and medium-sized cities are a very good platform for network-based approach because they know each other. They are closer communities, they don't know the players. It's easier to have strategies that are going towards same directions. I was looking at the Baltic Sea region strategy with my good colleague and friend Kai Pöhme from Spatial Foresight. This is, I guess, like 2.5 years ago. And these were the trends that we identified there. Changing demographic pressure, renewing industries and innovation, deepening environmental conversion, and changing democratic decision makings. And then I was just like updating that what has happened in these trends, what are the most important things that we identified concerning the Baltic Sea region. And as mentioned, aging, migration, brain drain, those are the big questions in demographic pressure. But think about, for example, again, a brain drain. People from the Baltic Sea region, they have to go to the other countries of the world, to the other continents, to come up with those good companions and the ideas and capital, and then bring it back to the Baltic Sea region in some point. Again, for example, brain drain can be also a very positive thing for small and medium-sized cities if they have policy to actually get the know-how back to their city and the respective countries. Thinking about the renewing industries, we have the globalization, we have the new value chains, and then there is the fourth industrial revolution. But still, the Baltic Sea region and the small, medium-sized cities, perfect places for blue growth, and clean tech. Again, applying these knowledges in each city or country can be very valuable. In the environmental, it's of course the climate change, and climate change, it's not anymore a trend or theme in development. It's implemented in every policies, in every decision. You have to have the climate aspect, and it cannot be taken apart from any policy. The cross-sectoral policies and network-based approach, as I mentioned, small and medium-sized cities, easier to pull the players together, and that way it can be more effectively applied knowledge. And then finally, the decision making. We have, unfortunately, still the race of inward national policies, but this is place for WASAP. Having these international shared visions, shared values, together with different countries, keep on this very important work. And finally, there is the new forms of participation. At least in Finland, we're talking about the power of fourth sector, means people that are not organized the same way as they were before in some parties or other forms of cooperation, but people, how they are connected to development work. So it's public, private, but also the people partnership in the future. And then when I was just looking at the small and medium-sized cities, that what are the most key functions, in my opinion, at the moment in these trends? It's of course, as Ilona already mentioned, that it's the backbone for the polycentric structure. And the feeling of not left behind, how important that becomes in the future. And the small, medium-sized cities that are there on the edge at every moment, that's a key thing, how they are in the network, how they are included to the policies. That's very, very important. Then the other point was, I was kind of trying to find a word, but that's not very good. But I'm saying that they have these acceptability valves for corridor development. Now when we are looking at different kind of corridors that we have between the major cities, and then there is often these small and medium-sized cities, and it's so important that these cities are somehow included in these national or international corridors. It's the rail link that is important, and it's the know-how that is important. Those are the two factors that are important. But the other thing is that there are some other connections between the small and medium-sized cities, and this link is actually very important for the acceptance of this corridor. So you have to include these kind of small and medium-sized cities, even though you're talking about the corridors that are between the major cities. And finally, they are more and more important platforms for these international competence networks. And there, you don't have to connect to your own capital. You connect to wherever the best knowledge is, and then you apply it in your city. So it's not about like national networks, it's about international networks. Here, you can find your links to Stockholm, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Riga, wherever, and you don't have to look at your own capital. Then I was just very quickly going through these long-term plans where you see the meaning of growth and the cohesion in VASAP. And how important the small and medium-sized cities are for these growth engines and also the urban-rural partnership. Soon we will learn more about the cluster development and how important these players are in the cluster development and how important they're stitching together the urban fabric of the Baltic Sea region. And in these my slides, which I'm not going to in detail, there is now data from each country. We're just very quickly going through those and just picking up some keywords that how they have been adopted in national policies. Belarus, industrial orientation, urban environment, service provision in Samstan. In Denmark, you have smart cities and connectivity underlined importance. And when looking at these two, Belarus and Denmark, you see the pattern. There is, of course, countries with a lot of top-down policy orientation, and then you have very strong bottom-up network-based approach like Denmark has. And there is quite often no explicit urban policy, which makes it a bit more difficult to connect national policies, but it makes it more easier for actor-based cooperation, so easier for players to actually find the other actors from other countries. In Estonia, the regional shrinkage is one question, connectivity, but then also innovation, regional specialization, and cooperation, connectivity also mentioned in Estonia. In Finland, well, I could talk this about 15 minutes because we have a new government coming in next week, and the governmental program was introduced yesterday. I had opportunity to think with them. I used to work in the ministry for 10 years, and now I've been doing 7 years for this consultancy, and we were discussing a lot how to treat small and medium-sized cities. And actually, story learned from Finland. If it disappears from the national agenda, as it did, unfortunately, for past governmental period, 4 years, the urban policy was not mentioned. The small and medium-sized cities were not mentioned, and they were forgotten. We were focusing on the major cities. Now the new program is actually picking them up again. Last time it happened 17 years ago when we had the government at that period, and then we started urban programs. One tool that has been quite efficient are these urban growth agreements, and this development work is going towards alliances, so it's networks where the roles are even more pronounced, and even the resources are more strictly pooled to these alliances, and we are using these growth agreements as tools. And we have also these structural changes as everywhere, but in Finland we also have positive structural changes. So there are regions that are We are lacking labor force, like in the Turku region and the small cities there. So they have to have special tools for attracting labor force to these few cities. In Germany, it's urban-rural linkages, connectivity. Here in Latvia, it's very strong planning documents. And you have, I think, the most pronounced like polycentric development policy here in Latvia. I love this stuff, what I was going through here. And this is something that we have done earlier, but now we should learn so much from Latvia in Finland, I mean, and having this polycentric policy, where the reducing existing negative disparities and providing this balanced and sustainable regional development are the key elements. In Poland, it's sustainable development, job creation, improving the quality of life, connectivity and polycentricity mentioned very strongly. And finally, in Sweden, increased cooperation, place-based approach in the country. So finally, how are the challenges and the opportunities in these material? What is mentioned in the countries? What is relevant at the moment? According to our interpretation, it's aging, the question of shrinking regions, as was mentioned earlier, out and in migration, how do you treat that? Service provision, urban renewal, urban sprawl, suburbanization, densification of questions. Is there metropolitization? How are the links built to the small and medium-sized cities? And then what are the opportunities for a more balanced territorial development with globalized metro regions, metro centers, good quality livable spaces, regional attractiveness and competitiveness, service centers for rural areas, and to blur this urban-rural divide. They are functional urban areas, as we did with a lot of studies 50 years ago, also it is. So what are the future steps? They have huge potential for this growth, but more importantly, I would say the cohesion is important, even more important in the coming years. The growth corridors and the role of the small and medium-sized cities in there. And then when we have these networks and alliances, what are the competences and profiles there? The cities have to come up with their own ideas and have this clear profile for these networks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Janne. I will not ask questions now because you will also participate later in the discussion, so there will be time for everyone to ask questions. And now we have the last, but not least, speaker in the first part of our conference before we go to the coffee break. So I would like to invite now Dr. Anna Sobczak. She is a policy officer for clusters and emerging industries from DG GROW, and she's going to talk about European cluster policy. Please welcome with applause, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. It's my first time in Latvia, first time in Riga, so I'm very happy to be and also joining you in the WASAP family. I'm very impressed with all the quality of your work and also the presentations. And you're wondering what I'm doing here exactly, talking about European cluster policy. I hope I will be able to provide you some answers to all the global European trends that we're discussing, about different opportunities and challenges. And for me, as I'm policy officer for clusters and emerging industries, of course, the answer is clusters. So here, mostly it's how are we using clusters to support small and medium enterprises? Because where our competitive advantages in Europe lie, most of the businesses in Europe, over 90%, are in fact small and medium enterprises. They're the ones who are the most innovative. But what they are lacking is to tap into European and global value chains. And we at the European Commission, and particularly in my unit responsible for clusters policy, we're trying to put forward, well, not trying, we are putting forward different instruments and cluster initiatives to exactly help European small and medium enterprises to tap into global and European value chains. So just to give you the overview, my favorite letter is C. It's not only because for clusters, but it's also what we discussed for connectivity, cooperation, and competition, because also to cooperate you need a little bit of competition, competitive advantage. And as well, what is very important is cross-sectoral and cross-border cooperation that I will guide you through during my presentation. And as well, what we see even in the times of social media, everything, we see that communication is still crucial, because there are lots of opportunities to cooperate, but often we just are not aware of that. So it's important to have those intermediaries, these facilitators, which exactly are very necessary for small and medium enterprises that often lack human resources to do so, to tap again to all the different opportunities. So again, why clusters? We talked today quite a lot about ecosystems. They offer a favorable ecosystems, particularly for small and medium enterprises. They host innovative companies. We have the data to prove that the companies located in clusters, and I really do hope that everybody knows what cluster is. If there is anybody who does not know, I will provide a definition. Everybody knows, perfect. So the companies who are located in clusters, they registered more patents, more trademarks. They employ more people than the companies which are located outside of clusters. And particularly here in our European context, we're not still completely out of the woods, let's say, in terms of economic crisis. We noticed that the companies located in clusters were much more resilient to the shocks, to the economic and financial crisis. And clusters as such, they reach out to the groups of related SMEs. What do I mean by that? Those are SMEs from different sectors. So this is important. They're interrelated. We're not talking about, we're breaking silos here. So basically we're talking about companies coming from different related sectors. Now, increasingly, we're talking about value chains, industrial value chains, rather than just pure industrial sectors. And clusters are very well positioned as facilitators and bridge builders. So on one hand, facilitators for innovation, for cooperations, and bridge builders, because they are also reaching out not only to SMEs, but also to technology centers, educational centers, policymakers at the local, urban level, so exactly cities level, regional level, national and European level. So they have this dimension of, on one hand, cross-sectoral, but also cross-border, cross-regional. And as a result, they create the strategic partnerships at the level of policymaker and intermediaries. And I will show you some examples of also how they provide customized, another C word, customized, so tailored made services to the needs of SMEs. This is really crucial because clusters are organizations as SME intermediaries, they should know what are the needs of SMEs. And if they know what are the needs of SMEs, they know what they want. Do they need to get more innovative? Do they need to find a partner across the borders or even in the third countries, what we call in US, in Canada, in China? So this is the logic. Do I need to improve the skills of also to capacity building? So it's customized business support services. So here are some statistics. We consider clusters as accelerators for growth and industrial change. We identified in Europe over 3,000 clusters in related industries, and you can see some of the statistics you can find online. We put forward the European cluster policy based on 3 pillars. As you know, at European Union, European Commission, number 3 is a magic number. So we also try to put forward and meet this magic number. So clusters are as accelerators for innovation, industrial change. So these bridge builders, facilitators. And here we have a very ambitious program under Horizon 2020 called InnoSup 1, Support for Innovation, and it's cluster facilitated projects for new industrial value chains. And the budget that we have is very significant, it's 130 million euros. So each consortium receives 5 million euros, but what is crucial here, it's very important, that 75% of this 5 million euros have to be directly dedicated to support innovation in small and medium enterprises. So the consortium that gets this budget has to demonstrate, show that 3/4 of the budget goes to support innovation in small and medium enterprises across sectors and across borders. This is important. Of course, the second pillar, it's related to this, it's this interregional, international cluster cooperation. So across borders within the European Union or within, in this case, COSME countries, so also it includes Western Balkans and as well, and also cooperation across borders, what outside of the EU, what we called third countries, so Canada, United States, South Korea, Taiwan. I will provide you some examples. And if we ask the cluster organizations, cluster managers, to deliver all those services to SMEs, also for cooperation, for connectivity, innovation, we have to as well develop their skills, their competences, so they know how to provide the tailor-made, customized services to SMEs. They're aware of all the trends which are happening, the global trends, the European trends, so we have to also invest in capacity building. That's why we put forward the Cluster Excellence Program. And this year, for the first time, we're also launching something called Erasmus for Clusters. But because of their trademark, we cannot use the word Erasmus, so we call it Cluster Exchange, but the idea is also similar. So I mentioned for you the most ambitious project under Horizon 2020, cluster facilitated projects for new industrial value chains. So you can see we have ongoing 13 projects. You can see some logos, maybe some of them you're familiar with. I know that for the Baltic region, Blue Growth is very important. We have, for instance, the project Neptune, where we bring the innovation from the aerospace sector into maritime logistics sector. So you see, you have this cross-sectoral dimension and cross-regional as well dimension. We have, for instance, the project Katana, which is the innovation from a digital sector, also drones applied in agri-food sector. Projects such as, let's say, Cross for Health, again, aerospace applied to medical devices, personal health. Those are also the trends which were mentioned by my colleague, Mr. Świeboda, that also this medical med care, it's very important, it's increasing. That's where in Europe we see lots of innovation happening. Interesting enough, in personal medicine and also in agri-food. And that's what we can see based on our project, this cluster facilitated projects for new industrial value chains. So here you can see the geographical scope. You can see the partners of all those 13 projects. So they cover almost all Horizon 2020 countries. There is a small potential I see for the Baltic region, particularly for I see Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And for this year, I can tell you we just had a kickoff meeting exactly 2 weeks ago, and I can see already 3 Lithuanian partners, but I have not seen yet the Latvian partners. So just to inform you, next year we're going to have another call with a deadline at the beginning of April. The call will be open this November. So if you're interested in this project, please apply, and I really hope next year I will see Latvian partners there as well in InnoSup. And it's also to your right, you can see the map of SMEs that receive the support. So it's even wider, the map of SMEs that receive support as a result of the InnoSub-1 projects. So it's also the map. Again, you see one country missing here. So I really hope there is a big potential for you. I hope after this event, there will be an increased interest in our project of the InnoSub-1. So this was the information when I talk about clusters as accelerators for industrial change, for innovation, bringing and particularly helping SMEs to tap into European value chains and to foster innovation. And I also mentioned the second pillar, which was about cooperation. So clusters support SME access to global value chains, the global trends that we were talking about. So you see the countries which are the biggest interest with this joint cluster partnerships are USA, Canada, China, Japan. And what is it about? It's about implementing joint international strategies of European clusters and support SME collaboration with partners in third countries. And how are we doing it? There is on one hand this joint international strategy, so different cluster organizations around Europe get together, put forward a joint international strategy how to access another market outside of the EU. And also we are trying to help them by organizing different international cluster matchmaking events. So as we speak now, in Toronto, we have a meeting now in Canada, cluster matchmaking, so European clusters together with Canadian super clusters that we are following the model. We had in this year also event organized in Casablanca, in Bucharest, and also in Lyon. You might wonder, okay, what will happen post-2020? That's the question we always get. I think you can also agree. If only we knew. We knew already European elections happen. That's good news. The rate increased, particularly in my home country, from 20% participating in the vote. Now it's 40% that participated. I will not comment on the results. We're just very pleased in increasing of participation. And so I cannot really give you the answer exactly what will happen, but we put forward some proposals because we at the European Commission, we think strategically. At least we hope we do think strategically. So we try to anticipate certain things. So we put forward proposals that later, of course, have to be accepted by the Parliament and also by the member states. And here we also answer to the request of the member states. So just to let you know that last year, member states, during the Council conclusions on the EU industrial policy, called for the further development of the European cluster policy. And how? What do they expect it? With the aim to linking up, so connecting, and scaling up, so increasing, growing, regional clusters, which means the cluster across from the regional place, into cross-European world-class clusters. So some say like super clusters similar to Canadian model, some said European Silicon Valleys. And the logic behind is that it's based on smart specialization principles. So the principles of the regional innovation strategies. So here, what do we see? That we have the elements of industrial policy, so helping, making SMEs more competitive. We have elements of innovation policies, because it's regional innovation strategies, and of course, elements of the regional and urban policies, which are very much also relevant to middle-sized cities. And in order, what's the logic behind? To help to support the emergence of new value chains across Europe. So basically, get more competitive, have more European competitive advantage, and as our president says, to create more jobs and more growth. And we are trying to answer to this call of the member states. So we had discussions among all the ministries across European Union, EU 28 countries, with dialogue, ministers responsible for cluster policies at ministries of Time's Up, I'm running. So basically you can see the different elements. What I want to tell you that we're putting forward Commission expert group on clusters. So if any of you, members of the ministries, industry, academia, research centers, cluster experts would be interested to be a part of it, please check out the call and will be invited to apply. You can watch the film. There was a little link there if you'd like to find more. We organize EU Cluster Weeks campaign about awareness raising campaign, and particularly here I would like to emphasize this Baltic Cluster Forum, which took place in Kaunas in Lithuania in March, which also many representatives of Latvia were also present, and from all the Baltic region. So you can see the information. The main themes discussed was innovation, creativity, cross-sectoral cooperation, smart specialization. So let's also see that that's the interest. I prepared for you slides on all those different events under the EU Cluster Weeks campaign, but you will receive my presentation. You can see it. Later, the biggest event was organized in Denmark with over 2,500 participants on Future Week. We have testimonials, okay. So this is where moving towards joint cluster initiatives, bringing all the 3 pillars that I discussed before, adding skills, scaling up, and mobility. We just had last month organized our major conference, European Cluster Conference. You also can see the link here where main words were discussed, this sustainability, trust, collaboration, internationalization. There was a Bucharest declaration with 10 national cluster associations to team up to form European Alliance of National Cluster Associations, which is exactly about cooperation. And I have 30 seconds. If you'd like to find out any more information, please do follow and check our European Cluster Collaboration Platform. This is the voice of our European cluster policy, clusters organizations. This is where you can find all the information about events, about calls, about all different, what's happening basically in the cluster world. There is a short video of 3 minutes. I will not show it now. You will get a presentation, so you can watch it. It's quite pleasant, more visually attractive than maybe this presentation. And I thank you very much for your attention. I hope we will be able to cooperate and we'll join the WASAP family. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. So now it's time for a coffee break. Let's be back at 20 minutes past 11, and we'll have the second part. All right, so we are ready to continue with the second part of our conference. So if in the first part we were focusing on more global aspects of the competitiveness of small and medium-sized cities in the Baltic Sea region, so now the second part of the conference will be devoted to talk about more local aspects, and we will hear from 6 different cities their experiences with making their cities more competitive. And with no further ado, I will just start with the first speaker and invite Alexandra Santos. She's business development lead from Finland. She's a co-founder and CEO of Stream Startup Festival, which is a non-profit startup event in Tampere. And Alexandra is going to talk about local connectedness matters, Tribe Tampere story. Please welcome.
Thank you so much. And first of all, thank you so much for inviting me and the opportunity to tell our story and as well learn from what other cities, small cities, are doing. The concept of small city is very relative. In Finland, we are the the third biggest city in Finland, but when we compare in a global scale, we are extremely small, and it's all about that. From the morning now, it's very different. So it's really, the presentation is about the power of the people and really creating clusters that are not governmental driven. I'm just a normal citizen, and with other entrepreneurs in the city, as well student associations, we decided to form an association back in August 2017. We are a non-profit, grassroots level entrepreneurial community, and we call ourselves a community of communities. Our mission is really, there was a lot of talk about collaboration and cross-border collaboration. It's all about what we do. We stimulate the collaboration in the action between all the key organizations in the city, and we do try to bring this startup mindset and this doers do culture and action. You will hear a lot about startups in my presentation. We are very much driven about startup ecosystem growing. So for those that don't know about startups, basically are those companies that go for a very fast growth and they go internationally quite fast. They are one of the drivers these days of the economy in worldwide. Everybody heard about Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley back in the 70s started as well with a community. And the community has been now working for 30 or 40 years. So we have a lot to catch up in smaller ecosystems. And our vision was really to build this entrepreneurial ecosystem in the city. And this because in 2017, what we could see is that there was a lot of organizations that were doing an excellent job. There were grants provided for new founded companies. There were already programs by the government, but everybody was working in silos. And even though Tampere, it is the second biggest urban center in Finland, it was really lagging dramatically regarding startup ecosystem development. So what we did is that we start putting everybody talking with everybody. And that means that for over a year, we were talking with the city, we were talking about economic development agencies, and we're basically educating them about why this would be so important for Tampere, and why actually, if they would put some effort in supporting our actions, how we could actually put Tampere on the map. We have now been operating for 1.5 years. We receive a yearly subsidy from the city. Otherwise, we are a really volunteer-based community. At the moment, we estimate that we are around 150 people, and we've been doing a lot of volunteer hours. We collected some of the hours that we've done. A lot of work has been put here. We've been having some wonderful results. And majority of us, we are entrepreneurs, so we are very action-driven, and we like very much fast pace. And from, as you can see, the amount of visitors, the city has gave us a subsidy, and they gave us as well a space in downtown in the center that we're paying rent for. We wanted to still be a startup. We want money, but we decide where the money goes. And as well, we have 2 floors of startups, around 20 companies. We work a lot with other organizations, and that is what it's all about. From day one, we start putting the city, discussing with university, discussing with entrepreneurs themselves, putting everybody in the same room. And what we are talking a lot is that there was not a path in Tampere. If you wanted to be an entrepreneur and you wanted to grow your company global from day one, there was no services in the city. Majority of the cities, we had only one accelerator in the city that was providing these services. The majority of the companies after that were going to Helsinki, and we're losing a lot of talent, and we're losing a lot of companies in the region. And I talk there as well about these boosted initiatives. We're all about like enabling others to do things. We have created our own accelerator. We have created, like I co-founded one startup event in which we actually attract investors, not only from the region, but as well from the Baltics. We work very much with venture capitals and angel investors, bringing capital to the region. And as well, we go a lot abroad, and as well getting to know what others are doing. Even though the numbers have been extremely positive, we have run, of course, into some challenges. And the first one is that many times the public organizations want results immediately. And what we've been trying to say is that it's really a marathon. So the results to the city will come, 5-10 years, that you can actually see the amount of new companies in the region and the amount of money raised. At the moment, it's all about changing the mindset and really understanding that, this is really needed and this is what really can put Tampere on the map, really. It has been a slow process in this startup identity, branding, and strategy. It's very important, I think, for any small city to really understand their brand. Why Tampere? What do we have? Which kind of talents we have? Which kind of industries do we have? Tampere has a really long history in technology with Nokia, mobile phones, but as well in the heavy industry, mining, paper industry. And we're trying to say that if we want to continue innovative, then you actually need to work with startups in order to bring more even innovation. So at the moment, we're still, after 1.5 years, we're still missing from the public organizations this strategy. Who we want to be and how do we want to brand ourselves. Of course, as a startup community, we are not waiting for the strategies to be done on the paper. We continue every day on the ground and trying to really brand our ecosystem. There's as well lack of local venture capitals and angel investors, and as well a lack of private capital in the ecosystem building. So the local large corporations are unfortunately not giving back to the community as much as we want. But we know it's a process, so we are educating themselves. We are educating local investors to invest in startups instead of more traditional industries like real estate, but go for cutting-edge technology. And of course, it's very, very good that we are not-for-profit, volunteer-based, but we lack dramatically resources. So we only have one full-time person. Everything else is done on volunteer basis. And we are very ambitious, so we would like to grow a lot more. So and I know that us being pushing and really demanding has really worked. By the end of the year, we're going to open a new startup house in the city with 5 floors dedicated to startups. And we're going to play a major role in managing the operations. And I think it's the importance that really are the entrepreneurs part of the discussion at the table. And just giving some good advices to bring back to your cities. It has worked really well for us to really all sit at least once a month all together, and that means all the public organizations like the city, the Center for Development and Transportation, like business development agencies, universities, and entrepreneurs themselves. And we defined actions that we all are going to take in the next month in order to create our ecosystem. We are as well very open in any new initiatives. If we are open a new accelerator in the city, or if some company is going to open operations, openness that this company is growing, what can we do to help? And all about cross-border. So even though we are a very small startup community, we've been going global since day one. Like we've already been in Silicon Valley, and now we are mostly focused on the Baltics, and we've been like several times here in Riga and a lot as well in Estonia. And basically with the local startup communities, we are creating alliances, and as well with angel investors. We are inviting angel investors all the time to come to Finland. So and as well, the public sector has as well formed an alliance, and they are now a lot more, how to say, organized in how they are going to build the ecosystem. As we are seated on the same table as the public organizations, we can really influence how all the services are going to be drafted, because we are going to be the ones using actually the services at the end. From the initial map that you saw in the beginning, that was pretty much everything in clusters. We are going a lot more into the service and this design way that we actually are drafting at the moment the services that are missing in the city and can enable actually the companies to go global. And it's a lot about, there was a discussion before about this technology clusters. It's all about that. Like, we're very familiar with Horizon 2020 and with other EU mechanisms that we're really trying to connect with other clusters and hubs in the world and create collaboration. We know that we are small enough to create a hub by ourselves, but if we collaborate with others and in very industry, so we know that, we are very good in Tampere in hardware and IoT, so we have been in contact with clusters in other cities that are good at hardware and IoT. Like yesterday, I just met with a hardware accelerator here in Riga, so we are starting a new collaboration. And all of this is basically without, you don't need the government backing all your operations. You can just go and do and create those collaborations. And this is basically how the ecosystem is starting to look now. We're starting to look like what startups need, what entrepreneurs need, what students need, what are really the services that they can all use, what are the services missing, what are the organizations part of it. Because it really takes a village to raise a startup ecosystem. So collaboration is really the key. So get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Alexandra. And there's enough time for one quick question if there's any questions from audience. Okay, we have a question. Yes.
One question. Can you characterize a profile of your startuppers, what they are doing, which kind of business starting?
Yeah, we have a lot of startups in SaaS, so software, hardware, IoT, and gaming. So those are like kind of the strengths of the region. And gaming is starting to be like Helsinki is famous worldwide to actually be the gaming cluster in the world, and Tampere as well. Like we're just supporting a group of gaming entrepreneurs to form an association. There's already 100 people that will form the association, and we have already around 30 companies. And we know that how you grow is really to work together and collaborate. So we do find very much the importance that everybody's kind of co-located in the same location and really helping each other in the questions of growth, financing, everything. So kind of we support each other.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So big applause once again for Alexandra. And we will move on to our next speaker, and I'm happy to invite here Josefine Wallström from Bjuv municipality in Sweden. She's a communication director in the municipality of Bjuv, and she has a lot of experience in communication of change management and branding. So we'll be happy to hear the story of yours. The floor is yours. Please, applause.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here. And I'm going to show you Bjuv, because I don't think you know where Bjuv is and what Bjuv is, but I will tell you the story. Bjuv is a small municipality in the south of Sweden. As you can see, it's close to Malmö and Copenhagen. Bjuv is, like many other municipalities in Sweden and Europe, a mill town. Here, the mine industry was very big in the 1800s and 1900s. And during the last decade, the construction enterprises were dominant. Almost everyone in Bjuv had their employment at the factory. And in Bjuv, the factory was Findus, an international frozen food brand, which I don't know if it's known in Latvia. No, okay, it's known in Italy, I know, as well. Anyway, during the last decade, the number of employees decreased on Findus from several thousand to be counted in hundreds. Despite being a smaller employer, it remained to set the signature of the community. Findus, as a brand, was extremely strongly connected to the town. During its peak years, Findus had been of great importance, not only as an employer, but also as an influencer in regards to the municipality's infrastructure and construction. But 3 years ago, in March 2016, Findus announced that they were going to close their factory, as in many other municipalities, and move their main office to another city. The press release was a shock, not only for Bjuv as a municipality, but also for Sweden as a nation. The Prime Minister called, ministers visited Bjuv, and the union supported from highest level. It was some crazy weeks there. But at this time, Findus had 400 employees at the factory, and 200 of them lived in Bjuv. So we soon realized that Bjuv and the region had a good and stable economic growth. Mostly every one of the employees will have a new employment. So unemployment wasn't the main issue. The challenge for us as a municipality was to find a new identity. What was the solid Findus town now suddenly needed a new direction and a new vision. It became top priority to communicate Bjuv as competitive in a totally new arena. We had to work in a new and sustainable way. Creating a new identity was not only a challenge for us, but it remained an opportunity as well, because now it was the time to change the image of the municipality. So, how did we achieve this? To keep Bjuv competitive in an arena where municipalities compete of inhabitants, we had to create a long-time strategy to where Bjuv became an attractive and true alternative to people. First, a clear and supported vision. To point out where Bjuv should be, during a year, politicians, officials, and inhabitants worked together and created an internal vision pointing at 2030. Bjuv should be a society where all, despite who you are, take an active part in creating the society. The vision, be a part of the transformation of an entire community, sets its focus on development, sustainability, and equality. And as a consequence of the vision, we focused on sustainability. Sustainability should be a leading star that penetrates all future discussions related to economy, environment, and communication. Next focus arena was education, because we decided to move from a worker-oriented society to a knowledge society. And that's why we made a lot of efforts and focused on school. And I can talk about this for a very long time, so this will be really short. But with high expectations and systematic work, the results improved dramatically on a short term. Bjuv was ranked among the bottom municipalities in Sweden in regards to the school results. And we climbed in a few years and became on the top 20% of the municipalities today, I think. At the same time, we decided to construct and complete a new school. A design and blueprint made from inside to outwards from the vision. Together with students and teachers, the school layout appeared and made a compromise where several stakeholders had a generous portion of impact. So this became a symbol for the development of the municipality, that this was a forward evidence that our vision was real and not only a simple sentence on the web. Here. Branding and positioning. We now realize that all development needed to be communicated under a unified identity. That's why we initiated a job to identify the trademark. Again, together with the inhabitants, we are now working, and soon we're working, so we will soon will be able to present the work on what and who Bjuv should be in the future. So, how about the results? 3 years ago, Findus decided to close and leave Bjuv. A major development work has started. Major projects related to education and construction are progressing fast. We are presently busy with a trademark platform that will be released shortly. The challenge now for us as a municipality is to develop the vision, because development and change, just to prove change, makes no sense these days. The vision with Bjuv 2030 remains as the main target, and so it should be. Today, we have a cluster of entrepreneurs established in the old factory. Here you see a photo from the press conference with one of the Swedish ministers. And a couple of weeks ago, Bjuv municipality became the official owner of 300 acres of land. The area bought from Findus with the location to the central parts of Bjuv and a train station, where you can easily take the train to go to Malmö and Copenhagen. The area will be a construction site for a sustainable neighborhood with more than 2,000 new housing. The project is a collaboration with the Swedish government as their work on how to construct future housing. Several construction companies paid their attention and wants to be part of the journey. So this is future Bjuv. And I conclude here that in Bjuv, development is cyclic. In the place where Findus once created the future municipality, we are now constructing our future municipality with modern housing in sustainable Bjuv together with the inhabitants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
No.
No question? I just wanted to ask you then myself. So if there would be one thing that you would be able to tell to all the small cities and medium-sized cities, what would be the message that you would say if they want to become more competitive? Just one thing.
An internal vision, to put words on where you want to be and do it together with the inhabitants, together with the politicians. So you start with this and you put words so you will have the same language.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
it's a good message. Thank you. Once again, applause. Okay, so now we will move to our third speaker, and it will be Guga Zachariasdottir. She's an architect at Bornholm Regional Municipality in Denmark, and she will talk about People Meeting, a political festival. Sounds very interesting. The floor is yours. Please welcome with applause.
Yeah. I am, as you can see on the name, Zachariasdottir. I'm from Iceland, but I'm living on Bornholm and working at the municipality. And I'm an architect, first time in Riga. So I have been enjoying 2 or 3 days here, looking at your nice town and buildings, special buildings. Greetings from the mayor of Bornholm and the director of the People Democratic Festival. They were not able to attend here today because of the election for the parliament that's due tomorrow, and the People's Democratic Festival is going to take place next week, so they are quite busy. How can a 4-day annual health festival support? How can a 4-day annual festival support sustainability of a small city in a rural area on northern Bornholm? I must say, a small city it's almost a village compared to the places you are talking about. It has only 1,400,000 inhabitants. Allinge is on the northern Bornholm. It's the fourth largest city on Bornholm, with its only 1,400 inhabitants. It's a city with an old center, with an old harbor, and before the harbors was full of fishing boats. Now it's empty in the wintertime, and in summertime they have guest visitors, sailors occupying the harbor. It's in a very nice surrounding, very nice nature and landscape on northern Bornholm. That's Allinge. Can I use this here? Yeah. Allinge with the harbor, and another village. Sandway. It's almost grown together, and you can see it's a very, very nice landscape. The Allinge is situated in. Before the first meeting, the People's Democratic meeting, the festival, Allinge showed all the signs of a small village in a rural area with population shrinking, age distress, lot of elderly generation, young people moving away, etc., etc. Employment mainly in the 2 months in the summertime. The idea about the People's Festival, the People Democratic Meeting, started already in 2009, and it's from an idea from Almedalsveckan in Sweden. And in 2010, it took momentum when the minister had an interview in a newspaper, and said that we could have arranged a meeting like that on Bornholm. He suggested on Bornholm, and the officials on Bornholm and the municipality, they had been working on a case study for a year. So they said, yes, let's do it on Bornholm, and starting preparing the first meeting at 2011. The aim is to gather people, individuals, organizations with interest in democracy, and not depending on the political parties or political colors. It's a different. As I have never been on Gotland for this Almedalsveckan, but as I understand, it's a more political party festival. So now it should be more events and debate for organization. Political parties are also participating, but it's more event for regular people. The first meeting was held in 2011, and we expected 2,500 people to participate. Already at that time, we had a great interest in this event, and we received 10,000 people. So we were not quite prepared. So there was quite a chaos the first day with the traffic, getting people to Bornholm, getting people to Allinge. They got stuck on the roads. There were not food enough. People got hungry in bed and where to sleep. The digital connection broke down. And yes, but the sun was shining, and people were happy, and the community opened their homes, prepared food for people, prepared beds so they could sleep. So even after all these challenges or difficulties in the beginning, people were seeing forward to come next year for the festival. And from then, it just started growing and growing. In 2015, we had how many? Stay there. People attending. Yeah. 2015, Realdania allocated funding for making a master plan for the future of the sustainability of the festival, and it should also Allinge and the community should also gain something from the festival. How can we arrange and support the festival so that it can support Allinge and the community on Northern Bornholm? It should focus on the 3 seasons. We called it the 3 seasons. The festival season, the 4 days in June, the tourist season, the summer season, and the winter off season. How can these 4 days of people's meeting in June support the economic of Allinge that is based on tourism? And how could they support the community the whole year around? 3 teams participated in this competition, and at the festival in 2015, we had some expedition where people were participating in and debating on the proposal from the teams. And the community got involved in the process of planning and elaborating the master plan. Both younger generation and the elder generation, and we could see, we asked the young people to point out what they were doing in Allinge and where they were gathering, and putting signs and stars on the map. And it showed that there was no really a place to gather, have fun, because they said we are gathering in Netto, this is a supermarket, because where else to stay? So it showed that the town also needed to make some plans and interesting activity places for the future generation. The master plan is all the 3 teams suggested that the secretary of the People's Festival, political festival, it has been operating from Rønne, and now it should move to Allinge, and it should start supporting activities, democratic activities around the year. It already has happened. They are now inaugurating the new place here the first time in this people's meeting. And all the teams suggested that because Allinge is very a close little town, so people, having so many people, thousands of people gathering in the same places, should start using the fantastic nature around Allinge. That also has implemented some walking paths, some cycling paths out in the nature. It's also because it's so tight with this many 40,000 people at the same time in Allinge. Sometimes, and all these events, sometimes people have to go out and relax and think about what they have been participating in, meeting other friends and having talks and debate. So, and then there is also suggested that they should have a path along the coastline, both that should function better for the people's meeting with all the people, that should have some more structure to move on, and it also could support the Elling, as the city, with some real activities along the coast side. Now it's really like you did in the 60s, you put parking places along the coast side, so it's really hard really to come down, and you know, if there's fantastic surrounding along the coast, but people are not really successful coming down because of parking cars, roads, and things like that. So that should be also changed, and then some activities put along, like sailing, swimming in the water, doing things like that, or also the organizations should be supported in this process. That started with the competition in 2015. And now we are, after having this discussion with the community, and now we have the ideas of master plan. We are working on it. We started implementing. We started implementing the pathland along the coastline, and now we have 3 more years to work on that. Last year we had more than 100,000 guests in the whole, and that's really a lot on Bornholm, where you only have 40,000 inhabitants. We started the first year with 250 events. Now we have about 3,000. So we have been asking ourselves how it grows from year to year. How can it be growing? And challenges with that, now I just go fast to this. When you have so many people, you have ministers, and security takes a lot of place, but until now, everything is fine. The police is helping people finding way, giving them water, maybe the infrastructure, traffic, you know, have to, now we are making a road, so cars, and having parking places outside the city, and making a road outside the city. They don't have to drive into the city. It makes chaos. And like the first year, not enough food, and now it's not enough that restaurants and cafes have food, all kinds of pop-up places to serve food for 40,000 people. That need a lot. So places to relax with all these 1,000 people's, places for all the events. That's also a problem. So mainly, you can see it's the Bornholm has gained on the success of the festival, and Bornholm is hot now. More people are moving to Bornholm than leaving Bornholm. That's the first time for many, many years. It's people that maybe have been participating and then seeing, oh, there's a possibility here, but some young people with families are coming because of living sustainable life. You can do on Bornholm, or you can also make some smaller entrepreneurs businesses. That's a good milieu for that. All weekend houses are rented out, and the economy is boosting a little for Bornholm. And what did it do for Ellinge? It's the school is surviving. There are more inhabitants. Entrepreneurs are wanting to build some new housing. And the season is expanding to from spring to fall, but the winter season is still a little dull, a little dark. And but now we have 3 more years to work on the master plan, and maybe we could tell in 3 years' time we can tell some more about what success it is made. And now the latest, some other cities see that if you do some events, you make a brand, it will support your village, your little city. Like in one nearby town, they have a competition of fishing. Well, thousands of boats are coming from the Baltic Sea. And another one, Gudhjem, is doing a food festival. So thousands of people are coming and competing on making gastronomic food. So they also start to see the idea of having some some festivals that brand your city. Greetings from the Winnie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guga. Thank you for a very impressive work that you have done. I just wanted to mention that also here in Latvia we have a similar example that we can be very proud of. Cēsis, we have a very similar democratic festival. It will take place in June, by the end of June 28 and 29. So I guess you are very welcome to join us as well and for a small experience exchange. And I see that there are some people from Cēsis or who are living there, so they can also share their stories. So thank you very much for your presentation. Applause. Okay, I see that we need a bit of energy boost, and now I will just give you a small task that I invite all of you to do. So I invite you to turn to your neighbor, to whichever side you want, and just a quick thing that you have to do. You have to tell which is your favorite small or medium-sized city and why. Just very quickly, And those who don't have somebody to turn to, just think about it. Now we have Okay, I see a lot of noise. I think this was a good task. Okay, can I have your attention, please? Wow, this is very hard, not possible. Okay, very well. Now a second question. A second question for everyone. Can I have your attention, please? No, this is wild. So, a second question. So those who heard a city from your neighbor that you have never been to, can you raise your hands? Okay, there's a couple of people that heard about cities that were mentioned that you have never been to. So I guess if your neighbor said that this is a good city or a town to visit, there is a good reason for you to visit. So I encourage you to spend this summer and to discover new cities and towns. And I noticed that you had a lot of discussions, and this is something that I guess Democratic Festival looks like. At least in Lampa we hear and we see this kind of discussions happening. So I guess we need more of those. Nevertheless, let's move to the second part of this conference. And before we talked more about experiences in Nordic countries, then now we are moving to Baltic countries. And I'm very happy to invite here Andrius Vershinskas. He's from Kaunas in Agency from Lithuania, and he's Chief Project Manager of Business Division in this agency, and he's going to talk about Kaunas constantly becoming contemporary. Please welcome with applause.
Hello, everybody. Andrius Vershinskas from Kaunas Agency, and today, obviously, I'm going to talk a bit about Kaunas. I picked the title Kaunas constantly getting or becoming contemporary due to several reasons. First, in this modern, postmodern world with new global trends, fast changes, we all feel this push to become contemporary, constantly to adapt, to change, to be with the trends, especially for smaller, medium-sized cities, not the largest global metropolitans where the trends emerge. So, of course, this is quite universal, but this applies to Kaunas too. What is a bit more unique that Kaunas used to be capital of Lithuania between the First and the Second World Wars. Quite naturally, then the city grew very rapidly and fast, becoming vibrant European capital with and the birthplace of national culture, modern national culture, from borderland fortress city of Russian Empire. So back then, city was growing very rapidly and changing in urbanistics, architecture, socio-economically, culturally, demographically, and in its identity. So it's in Kaunas' DNA to become and to get constantly modern, more modern, to modernize, to become contemporary. On the other hand, this legacy posed a bit of a challenge as the city, and it's quite easy to live in the past, romanticizing it, and not becoming contemporary. So this is the challenge for Kaunas to leave and to build on its legacy and to move a bit forward. So I'll try to, having these challenges in mind, I'll try to briefly talk about the developments in Kaunas. What is Kaunas? If you would Google it, officially it has a bit less than 300,000 people, but we count it with Kaunas County as due to large-scale suburbanization, urban sprawl processes in the last 10-15 years, the city become a bit de facto wider region than its official boundaries. So we count that with students, non-registered citizens, we have roughly about 400,000 people on a daily basis operating as part and in Kaunas. More than half of it in the labor pool, 1/5 the youth, and Kaunas region is over 500,000. The demographic trends for the last 30 years were pretty negative, as on the one hand we had quite low birth ratio in comparison with death ratio, and also high immigration rate from all over Lithuania to other EU countries, also to the United States, but from Kaunas also to the capital Vilnius. However, there are some good news that the last year were the first one when Kaunas, if counted together with its county, started to gain citizens, so it started to grow. So thinking about why did it happen, and it seems that it is a reversion of the trend, and when we thought about the challenges that the decline posed, naturally you have to ask this ultimate question: what do citizens need from the city? And I'll try to structure my presentation around these three blocks: economic opportunities and prosperity, which is the backbone of cities and urban areas. Naturally well-developed city infrastructure, from roads, parks to good urban planning and high-quality and rich in variety free time activities. So, of course, fundamental is economic life, as it creates jobs, which creates opportunities for those who are living already in the cities to stay in it, or for newcomers to come. Historically, after Kaunas was and still is an industrial city, and after the collapse of Soviet Union, naturally it lost factories, companies lost its both resources and products markets. Local capital was scattered, weak. Companies, emerging companies didn't have a proper place in global chain of supplies. It also back then lacked latest technologies and know-how. For Lithuania, for Kaunas, as for many countries in the region, foreign direct investment attraction was one of the main policy tools to alter and foster its economic life. And of course, contemporary, it still stays as it is, despite the fact that the situation is much better now. And lately, Kaunas has picked several key sectors according to its strengths. So, medtech sector, this comes quite naturally, as Kaunas has a very strong, probably the largest, and we would like to at least believe, the strongest medical health sciences university in the Baltics. Similarly, one of the best, if not the best, technological university. So MedTech comes quite naturally, especially as having, as together with the other one, ICT, information technologies, both are higher added value generating sectors. And ICT is quite a historic industry and sector in Kaunas, even in Soviet times, if we will especially include electronics. MRO, maintenance, repair, overhaul, and aviation is a bit new one in Kaunas, but here we have a very big advantage as we have Kaunas Free Economic Zone with tax incentives and so-called plug-and-play principle for land areas. Located just in the neighborhood of International Kaunas Airport, which is the 4th largest in the Baltics, and being a logistical hotspot and crossroad, it's a perfect location, and we see big development potential in this one. And then this automotive sector, we have companies operating in Kaunas for more than 20 years who were manufacturing car parts of one of the best-known brands in the industry. But with the newcomers, Continental and Hella, we believe that we can create something of a real hub. And very shortly, medical tourism, as Kaunas has the highest per capita number of doctors in Lithuania, probably in the Baltics, and game dev startups mostly for especially tech graduates. If looking a bit more generally, 2017 were the breakthrough years in Kaunas. We have landed 3 big investors, Continental, Hella, Hollister. Only these 3 planned and or partly already invested 175 million euros. And together with research development centers, shared service centers, we got planned and probably already created more than 4,000 jobs. Before that, it was quite problematic for Kaunas to attract investors as it lacked larger space, proper modern office spaces. 2017 again were a quite breakthrough year, and since then the market has grown more than 155%. So now hopefully no problem for that, and it's still growing. Very shortly, finishing with the investment. What's quite, it's probably quite an insight from Kaunas case that naturally big investment news create good PR, but especially good PR of Kaunas municipalities team created some kind of the buzz and this idea, general opinion that about Kaunas revival, about Kaunas growth, especially in Lithuania, and of course this affects local potential, national potential investors, also local population, and those potential newcomers. For example, 30% of CVs that Hella got were from Lithuanians living abroad. So it's partly because of this PR effect. Of course, another PR much talked about thing where the renovation of Kaunas, with practically all the parks being renovated, and Kaunas is a very green city, renovation of public areas and streets, renewal of public transportation, but I'm moving to the final part, which is a bit more interesting maybe in Kaunas cases, some public projects. In 2011, Lithuania were hosting European Basketball Championship, and we are big on basketball, and also one of the best basketball teams in Europe, Žalgiris, needed a modern arena, so we built one, and it became quite a success. Even economically, it's profitable, which is a very rare case. It hosts practically every 3 days at least one sporting event, some concert, or some other event, which naturally creates tourist attraction, and maybe even more importantly, that it creates long-term PR, or PR just general, fosters and makes the picture of the city much better, as people are coming, seeing the new modern facility, leaving mostly with good emotions after some entertainment event. So naturally, they associate it with the city. Back then, the city actually was living not through its most optimistic times. So for Kaunas people, for patriotic Kaunas people, arena was some kind of promise of the better future. At the same time, once built, a reaffirming symbol that we could still do it at the world-class level, as the arena is the largest, the most modern in the Baltics, and also was voted to be the best, at least for basketball in Europe for the last 3 years. From architectural urbanistic side of view, it was built in the city center in the island in the Nemunas River, and it brought the visual improvement of that part. And now, after some time, we can tell that it fostered the development of its neighborhood as some kind of smaller scale business center's hub is now emerging in its neighborhood. And following this good example, Kaunas is planning 2 more public projects. If we would not count the building of new stadium, Čiurlionis Concert Center, it will solve 2 problems. On the one hand, Kaunas' need for high acoustic level concert venue, as we have quite good jazz, classical music festival, symphonic orchestra, and additionally there is a high need for larger space for congresses, conferences, symposiums in the city. So this will also work as the conference center. From urbanistic point of view, you could see that the building will be built on the right bank of the river, this way trying to foster the further development of the neighborhood and also trying to extend the city center over the river. And from architectural point of view, it will be built practically on the river, this way trying to attract city back to its huge natural assets, its rivers, as Kaunas is located at the confluence of 2 main Lithuanian rivers. And then we have the Science Island, which will be located in the Nemunas River Island, in the very same one where Arena is. It will be this innovative, attractive, interactive science popularization center, similar to Copernicus in Warsaw. And also it should work, and also work as a symbol of Kaunas in the past, contemporary, and in the future, the city of innovations, progress, and science. And I'm finishing up. In 2022, Kaunas will be the European Capital of Culture, and its motto is from temporary capital to contemporary. So the idea is not only to have 1 year of higher cultural activity level, or 1 year of more fireworks, but to have long-lasting effect on the community. And they even pose this challenge for themselves that even to alter and to change a bit city's identity, as it says in the motto, to move and to build on the legacy of the interwar times that we had, and to become contemporary, not necessarily capital, but to become contemporary, just contemporary Kaunas. So I thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, comments, ideas for Kaunas, feel free to contact me today or anytime after the conference. We are very friendly, so feel free to write me or even call me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Is there any question? Because I felt like when you mentioned the concert hall building on the river bank, I felt like there are some discussions in the room, but that's not because of your concert hall. That's most likely because of our possible concert hall, because there are a lot of hot discussions happening now. So there is a question, yes.
I can't help asking a question. I was glad to hear that you're investing in public spaces. When I was last in Kaunas, I really like your pedestrian street. I had a feeling that a lot of attention was taken from that street to this shopping mall, Acropolis. As you can hear, I'm not a fan of shopping malls, and my question is, is there a conflict here with investing in huge shopping malls and keeping a vibrant city, a public city space? How do you see that thing?
Actually, in Kaunas, despite the fact that the shopping mall, which is located actually next to the arena, and it's quite one of the biggest probably in Lithuania, so it's still the question on the debate agenda in the architectural urbanistic community, because there are some opinions who says it's better to have it, in the city center or in its near to it than to have it outside of the city, as it will still attract people. It generates some flow. I personally am a bit on your side and saying that there is some problem. Back then maybe it had some negative effect, but now it seems that hopefully, looking to the bright side, that we will have some kind of diversification. The shopping mall and the shoes shops and so on will be in the shopping mall, still again in the city center, and this Laisvės Avenue that you liked, I'm very glad to hear that, will be more the the alley of cafes, restaurants, and a bit more higher-end class shops. So hopefully this will go this way. We will see after the reconstruction of the alley.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Andrius. Thank you once again with applause. Okay, very short question.
I do have one very short question. The Kaunas is running for capital of culture, right?
We have won it already.
Congratulations.
Thank
But could you share a little bit why you are doing this and how it helps your city development?
From not serious side of, somebody has to do this, as it's Lithuania's turn. But from the city's perspective, it's a very good opportunity to, on the one hand, to grab attention, both national and especially international. On the other hand, I think it's very good potential event, also with the related financing, to alter cultural activities live and also to become a bit more of the tourist attraction spot, especially looking to the long-lasting effect. Because the idea is to build communities, to build young professionals into cultural sector during this year, PR year, and the year of the capital. But everything is focused to have the long-lasting effect. So just to foster Kaunas, even identity, but also communities engagement and the general cultural activity of the city.
Okay. Now, thank you very much. Thank you. Once again, applause. It's never too much. Never too much. Okay, so now we move on to the next speaker, and I'm very happy to invite here Raimond Tam. He's a deputy mayor of Tartu city government from Estonia, and he's going to talk about co-creation of sustainable Tartu. Please welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon.
And with applause, of course.
Really glad to be here, and many thanks to the organizers for the possibility to speak here. So about our lovely city of Tartu. I hope many of you have heard about Tartu. So we are the second largest city in Estonia. We are a traditional university city. We have had university since 1632 in Tartu, so it's a long time ago. But yes, today I'm speaking about the main challenges what we are facing right now. So I will speak about 5 challenges actually. So those are not the only challenges what we have, but in my opinion, the main challenges. So nevertheless, we are a wonderful city. We still have a slight decrease in the number of inhabitants, but it's not actually the true story, because the region as a whole is growing. Tartu region is growing, but as we have this urban sprawl, we also are facing the decrease in the number of inhabitants in our city. It basically means that our revenue basis is decreasing year after year, as income tax is the main revenue for the municipalities in Estonia. So that's something that we have to fight with. And we have 2 main strategies here. The first one is how to create the most exceptional living environment you can expect. Tartu has been highly valued because of its living environment, and we are trying to make our strengths even more stronger. So, and we are trying to attract new businesses and jobs to our region, to the city of Tartu. Based on those strategies, we have also found the tactical solutions. For example, we are trying to make Tartu as green as possible. We are highlighting the energy-related activities. We are highlighting the climate issues. We are also speaking about Tartu as a smart city. We are highlighting the smart city developments. Also, what has been highly valued by the citizens of Tartu, it's that Tartu is a very compact city. That the distances are short. You should not spend too much time on logistics, but at the same time, what they are also highly valuing, it's the compactness in case of the human relations. You can easily go to the mayor, you can easily go to the rector of the university, you can discuss, etc., etc. That's something very unique, and we should keep it. And then also, of course, Tartu as a university city, we have 20,000 students in Tartu. We have 11 higher education institutions. And we should use the potential much better, because universities are bringing new people to the city, and how we are actually managing to keep those people in the city, that's a key challenge for us. But yes, some solutions, what we are doing in field of smart city, for example, we are trying to get the maximum out of the state solutions what have been created. For example, digital signature, mobile ID, the digital ID, the ID card. We are trying to create a bunch of electronic services on the top of that, on the top of the facilities or features what have been created by the national government. Also, We are trying to develop our mobile services. For example, I don't know if you knew, but Tartu was the first city in the world which introduced mobile parking solution. It was in year 2000, quite a long time ago. And nowadays it's like a standard in most of the cities in the world. But we are trying to be as innovative and be first in the world in many cases. Also, Tartu has been a paperless city government since 2003. It's also quite a long time ago. So we don't have any papers on our working desks. We have only digital solutions, how to handle also legislative acts, also letters, whatever documents we are having. And also, I spoke about the green environment. Here, just a few of our solutions, for example, also public buildings, but we are building new buildings. We are trying to keep at the near zero energy consumption level at least. So also biogas buses will start in Tartu from the 1st of July this year. That's the next step in case of our public transportation. We have the district cooling network, which was first in the Baltics. So we have a district cooling network. Now we have 2 stations in the city, and it's actually helping us to save 70% on the CO2 emissions compared to the localized solutions. And we also have a different biogas production facilities. For example, here on the photo, we have our water company, which is 100% belonging to the city of Tartu. And we have the biogas production from the sewage sludge in this water company. So, and the latest development, what we will open on Saturday this week, it's so citywide bike sharing. It will be 750 bikes, including 2/3 electric bikes, and 69 stations all over the city. So basically, we are expecting it to become part of our public transportation. And until now, we have had 3,500 people who have registered already before opening the system to become the users of bike sharing. So we expect it to be a great success. And it's also having different modern technical solutions how to solve the bike sharing. So the second challenge I would like to speak about, it's a lack of high value-added jobs. Tartu is quite dependent on public sector. We have universities, we have big hospitals, we have different state institutions, municipal institutions. We are highly dependent on the public sector, and we would like to change it a little bit. We would like to have more high value-added jobs. We would like to have new businesses, new jobs from the business side. Nevertheless, we have between the river and the railway, we so-call it Tartu Silicon Alley, because we have a strong ICT sector, which is employing about 5,000 people altogether. And this Silicon Alley is, of course, offering these high value-added jobs, but only in ICT sector, and we should improve it also in case of other sectors. So what we have made our choice upon, it's to create exceptional business ecosystem, which is really supportive. It doesn't matter if you're a small company, big company, you will feel the support from the environment. And we are trying to make our universities more entrepreneurial. It means that we would like to have more people receiving the experience in businesses during the university studies, and we would like to have those scientists in the universities more business-oriented, to create the spin-offs and to support businesses. So what is one of the key tasks for this year for the ecosystem, business ecosystem, it's creation of the fast-track Tartu. It basically means that you have one window to enter the city, and then after moving in from this one window, you will be put into different parts of the city. You will get clear overview, what are your opportunities in this ecosystem, and if you are, let's say, reached a certain level from, maybe you're starting with a business and after a couple of years you are moving to the next level, then you will have new opportunities and you are slightly and smoothly moved within the ecosystem. So that's the aim, because if you're coming to Tartu and you have a bunch of different entrepreneurial centers, what you can see here, we have different hubs for startups. We have the Science Park, we have Center for Creative Industries, we have Biotechnology Park, etc. So we have many players in the ecosystem. And if you are a company from any other country, you do not feel like comfortable, but Fast Track Tartu should improve the situation remarkably. We also have the European Space Agency's business incubator located in Tartu. So as you see on the map, there are not too many business centers in the Eastern Europe. And we are really proud to have it. And we have many foreign companies who have come to Tartu, and only because of this European Space Agency Business Incubator. We also have our flagship event, Startup Festival, which is called Startup Day. If you have a look on the word startup, you can see that Tartu is contained in the word startup. So on the city signs, we also made this kind of improvements for the festival period, that we put S in the front and P in the end, and we had it on the borders of the city. It was a great marketing again. So this year in January, we had more than 3,000 people visiting, and from 65 countries. How many events you might have in smaller cities to have 65 countries represented? So it's a great event. So we heard about clusters and the importance of clusters. We have a good example from the city of Tartu. We have many clusters, of course, but that's, for me, it's a most, let's say, successful case. And that's a cluster for smart cities. So we have involved here not only companies, which are collaborating with each other, but we have universities, cities, science parks, and also citizens as living lab. So that's a great possibility that all the partners discuss and find out the bottlenecks, and they are trying to find the solutions all together. They are gathering, discussing, and then finding out the solutions which could be exported afterwards. They are tested in Tartu. We have 500 people in the living lab who are testing different services. And after that, it's possible to export it to any other countries in the world. Also, I have to speak about digitalization because Estonia as a public sector as a country, it's very highly developed in field of digitalization. But in case of businesses, we are quite lagging behind. So we have to change the situation somehow. We of course have Enterprise Estonia, which is a nationwide organization supporting businesses, but we felt that maybe the support and the topic is not highly, let's say, on everyday working desk for our companies, and we decided that we will open our digitalization support measure as a municipality, which is quite exceptional, because we have to support our businesses, especially the small and medium-sized businesses. They are having so much potential if they are using digital solutions, but they are not doing it currently. So we opened the measure this year, and we have about 10 companies now who have taken the advantage from this measure to receive support and make the first steps. But digitalization, it's really offering a lot of possibilities for companies. So our third challenge, we have really not favorable location. If you have a look on the map, we don't have a sea, of course, and we are quite far away from the capital city. We are quite far away from Riga also. So we would like to improve the external transportation connections. That's for the citizens, and that's also for the companies so much important. They have always told us, the first thing you have to deal with, it's the connections. But here we can do mainly the lobbying, because we cannot decide how many trains are running on the railways between Tallinn and Tartu, etc. We can just lobby. But what we made in case of flights, for example, we made a procurement as a municipality to have an international flight connection. And then we received offer from Finnair, and Finnair is now operating between Helsinki and Tartu. So it's operating 6 days a week. But it's offering us good possibilities, because it's flying out early in the morning, coming back late in the evening. Even we as people from Tartu, we can within 1 day be in Europe in most of the cities. So our fourth challenge, that's a limited in-house human and financial resources. That's a main problem for all the municipalities, I can imagine. You cannot hire the top-class, world-class specialists. You have to work hand in hand with other institutions, with other sectors. And in our case also, we feel that without having private sector involved, we wouldn't be as smart city as we are right now. And I will bring just a couple of examples also. Also the collaboration with universities. We have so much intellectual capital in the universities. We have so much really high-level scientists in the universities. And we could solve those problems quite easily. And one of the examples is here. We have planned as a city our public transportation for decades. And now when we found out that we have like about 30 different data sets which could be used for the transportation planning. We felt that we don't have the technology and in-house potential to develop actually the new public line network. And then we involved 2 companies, one from Finland and one from Estonia, and we found out a new public line network for Estonia, not for Estonia, but for Tartu. So, and the other one is this Internet of Things platform, which we really felt that we need in our city. We have more sensors in the city environment. We also have more actuators, whatever. And we found out that Telia, who is having great competence in this field, we would like to involve them and help us to develop as a city. And now we have heard that not too many cities in Europe are actually dealing with IoT things. So we are now seriously considering also different development space and opening of data based on the IoT platform. Also, we have another example from our water sports center or water center. It's owned 100% by the city, and in this case, we used for the renovation of technical systems, so energy saving performance contracts. So that's another opportunity. If you do not have enough funds for investments, you might have this kind of contracts. And last but not least, our challenge to make everybody speak about Tartu, and that's a great challenge. So that's why we have this smart city marketing, let's say, side, and we have this new visual identity of our smart city. So we also have different projects, which are high-level projects. For example, this European Commission supported project Smart and City, which made Tartu a lighthouse city in Eastern Europe, and we are proud to say that we are still the only lighthouse project in Eastern Europe for smart cities and communities. So it has made us much more known in Europe and hopefully in the world also. So it has been a great project, and we are also aiming to become the capital of culture. So our team is working seriously to become the capital of culture in 2024. So in August, the decision will be made. So our fingers crossed, and we hope to become. So thanks a lot for listening to me, and you're always very much welcome to Tartu.
Any question from the audience? Yes?
Yes, I will have a question about this digitalization support for enterprises. If you could tell us a little bit more what exactly you offer, because it sounds great. So I'm curious about the details.
Yeah. So we found out that if you are a small or medium-sized business, you do not have people who are familiar to digitalization in your company, and then we try to draw more attention on the digitalization possibilities. So for the first, we made the trainings together with business advisory service institution in the city, and after that we put into practice a certain measure, and we are paying real money to companies to have the first steps made and to have new solutions installed. So, and right now, even we have had some bigger companies who have taken advantage of the measure, and we are expecting that after the first steps that has been made, they will feel the positive outcome, and they will continue based on their own internal resources. But the first step, it's always hard to make, and that's why we try to help a little bit the companies. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I'm speaking about supporting certain solutions, not any kind of consultations or whatever.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Big round of applause. And as it was mentioned a couple of times before, that branding is super important when it comes to making small, medium-sized cities more competitive. Then our last but not least presentation will come from Laura Skrodela, who is director of Sigulda Development Agency in Latvia, and she's doing Sigulda's branding since 2011. So feel free to use the floor, and big round of applause again.
Thank you. For global trendsetters, they usually look at the 4 cities: London, Paris, Milan, and New York. What do all of rest can do? So I would say it's you have to find your way of doing the marketing, because all the cities, we're doing something, and it's a matter of selling the city, what you can offer in your city. And we see how the private companies are doing that. And we see every year research on saying which brands are the most valuable brands. And all of us, we have cars. Why we're buying the Mercedes instead of Volvos or Ferraris? So we are understanding the world in different kind of values and different kind of brands. So also the cities are the brands. And for the city developers, we need to understand that if you're not offering the Ferrari, then probably you can offer, I don't know, BMW or something else. So this is your story. What is your city and what you are offering for your inhabitants? And inhabitants is the first and main target audience, of course, but also businesses, how you are helping your businesses which are living already in your city, and what are the businesses that you can attract. What are you saying about your city? And also investments. If the investors are looking for the cities, why should they look at your city? What is something that you can tell about your city? So the city marketing comes from the, as an modern approach from the crime situation in New York in the 1970s. And probably you have seen these kind of T-shirts in every city in the world, just having the title instead of I love some other city. So what we have done, now we have worked for 9 years for the small city of Sigulda, which is located 1 hour drive from Riga. And I would say, like the Danish colleague told, more to the village side instead of saying and being able to use the word city. But it all started, my background is retail marketing. So one of my first jobs for the city was the mayor came up with an idea. If you have the loyalty card in different kind of retail chains, why you shouldn't have one for the city? And my first impression was, why should somebody wear a card saying I'm from this or this city? But when we put up this program already 8 years ago, now 90% of our people are having card, and you guess, we're the only town in Latvia with a positive growth of inhabitants still after regaining the Latvian independence. And that's one of the first jobs that people are doing when they move to Sigulda. They go and get this card because it says you are from this town. Having and being able to define what is your city, in performing this action, you can be really creative, because everything in the city is city marketing. The way that Tartu has done, I think it's a good way with the startup action and saying it on the sign of the city. I think that's a good approach. When you enter the city, roads are your marketing. People that you meet in the city, everything in the city is the city marketing. So you have to be really clever. You have to be really creative, like us, having a city logo also on the ice, on the bobsleigh and luge track during the World Championships. The bus that people are using every day, because you still have to remind them every morning when they get in their Mercedes-Benz, they know it's my Mercedes-Benz. In Sigulda, what we are reminding, you are Siguldian. You live in Sigulda. This is what you love, and why your day will be really great. At the same time, you have to understand that marketing for the city is run for the public money, so everybody will have an opinion. So this is something that you have to know in your backbone. And also as a threat, everybody in your city, if your brand is loved, they will use your brand. Also funeral services, casinos, everybody, because it's a public, yes? So you also have to be open and ensure that everybody can use the city logo. As my presentation is based kind of in lesson approach-wise, then I would say that the most important thing is that you need to have a vision of your city. And you have to stick no matter to what. This is a guy from Sigulda. It's a 5 times world champion in skeleton. And this also is an example. When we open new public space in the town, it also shows our new message. It shows our values. And this is something that you have to keep in mind. Be there for your citizens. People live now. They can never live in a wise of master plans and something that you do understand. They are living now, and the communication happens now. So, where are the people? I don't know. This conference is really good. Only some people are in the smartphones. But usually we are in the smartphones. So the city also have to be in the smartphone. This is something you have to look at the communications and the branding and what you are selling. So make a difference. Find the facts how your city differs from everybody else in the world. We found out that if you take a look at 3 last Winter Olympic Games, then we are #1 place in the world if you take into account 1 medal for inhabitants. Because we have 1 medal for less than 2,000 inhabitants. And this is why you have to be creative and find all these areas. For example, 2 years ago, National Geographic posted in September, Sigulda is the best fall site in the world. It took about 2 years to work on this publicity, but this is something you can do for free. It is just your job of your team. Really important thing, marketing is a function of management. This is something all the cities have to understand. Now we are running together with Stockholm and Åre for the Winter Olympic Games in 2026. It's going to be after 20 days when the decision will be made. Milan or Stockholm. We are really optimistic and we are sure that our combination of our sea of the Baltic Sea will win. So it's going to be the evening of the 24th of June. Please look online. And regarding our experience for the marketing for the city, I tell you to be brave in saying and using the slogan of the Italian designer for the diesel, only the brave. For the city marketing, you have to find your way and you have to be brave. We found our way 9 years ago. Last year, we were titled #1 city brand in Latvia. Not being the #1 town in Latvia and not being in inhabitants and so on. And what we did, we painted our logo in gold. So you have to do and find all your actions, what you're doing, and be really creative. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Fingers crossed for the results of Olympic Games. Is there any question? Quick question. Okay, I guess we were so impressed by the final decision that we are ready to now have a short coffee break, but really very short, because we'll be back in 1:15 when we will have a final part of this conference, and then we'll have lunch. So use a coffee break to refresh a bit, and then let's be back in 1:15. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had enough long break to refresh yourself and gain some energy. So we have reached the third part of our conference, and I'm very happy to invite here all the panelists here. So I'm going to introduce you so you know who are the speakers here sitting. So we have Anna Sobchak, who was giving already a presentation in the morning from DG Growth. Then we have Ilona Raugze from Espan EGTC. She's a director, and she was also giving a presentation in the morning. Then we have also Gunnars Ansiņš. He's a chairman of SCPD BCR. Very complicated. But I'm sure that you all understood that. Then we have a new face here today joining us on this floor. It's Mara Liepa-Zemeša. She's UBC Planning Cities Commission. And then we have Lars Porsche from Federal Office for Building and Regional Planning from Germany. And last but not least, we have also Janne Antikainen, which you heard already in the morning. He's from MDI, public consultancy company. And now I will give floor and then, how to say stuff, like pass on to my colleague Raivis Bremschmitz from the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development, and he will be the moderator of this discussion. And I guess you will also have a chance to participate, so be attentive and write down your questions, so there will be also time for you to ask them. Raivis, feel free to start.
Thank you for giving me the pass.
Well, I would say that first of all, the Baltic Sea region as a whole macro region is one of the most interesting ones in the world. It has interesting ideas, very like forward-going citizens and cities, which is like perfect test lab for any new ideas in the future. We have of course, the Western side with the traditional high-level competences and knowledge, and then we have like beautiful test places for any kind of future ideas. And that, like I said in my presentation, the scale of small and medium-sized can be an asset. It's a scale beneficial to be a small and medium-sized city in the Baltic Sea region. So welcome here.
I attended conference where different scientists discussed about the regions, and it was said that the Baltic Sea region is the most sustainable region in the world. So we are special with that.
Great fact. Fact looks at the numbers actually. I got to Ilona as an expert from everything side. Do you see also the numbers? Because I also would like to believe that the Baltic Sea region, especially Latvia, is the best place in the world. Yeah.
You know, it's always tricky with the numbers because they can tell you many different things for many different places, and it depends usually on the selection of the numbers. But what I would like to highlight is that the Baltic Sea region is at the same time very heterogeneous. It's actually different. And if we look at different numbers for different indicators, for example, at the level of development of the knowledge economy and also sustainability and the development of businesses, it is indeed different and not always in a good way. And we see that there are still some places in the Baltic Sea region that are lagging behind, especially on the eastern coast of the sea. And this is why, of course, one of the challenges is to further strengthen the cooperation among the different parts of the Baltic Sea region to make sure that everybody, more or less, all the cities of the Baltic Sea region, they are involved in networks, in cooperation that can ensure more or less adequate, not similar probably, but you know, relevant level of development in the different fields. The differences are quite pronounced if we look at the level of economic development and innovation still. And I hope that also Anna can also comment on this. If we look at the clusters and their development, and we also could see some of it in the presentation, also highlighting some gaps and potentials. Also, if you look at it from a more positive side. So there's still more work to be done to engage all the cities and other places in the Baltic Sea region, in the networks, in the cooperation, to really capitalize on the potentials of different places and to create this pan-Baltic innovation system and the structures that can support business development and promoting research and innovation at a global scale, so that we can also be perceived as a Baltic Sea region as something unique in this sense. I don't know, maybe Anna can also add to that.
Thank you very much. Indeed, what Ilona mentioned with clusters here in the European cluster policy, we're not supporting directly clusters. We're rather using clusters to support small and medium enterprises, so business development. So today we discussed that we should build upon our competitive advantages. And I already mentioned that a strong competitive advantage of Europe, and particularly also of the Baltic region, are small and medium enterprises, which have a huge innovative potential. All the big businesses started from small scale, and then they were scaled up or grew, increased. And our role is to help entrepreneurs to grow and small and medium enterprises to scale up. So that's what we want clusters to do. Because in Europe, we don't have issues with startups. You know, there are lots of startups. What we do have the issue is to help them scale up, to survive, let's say, that they don't die, but that they become sustainable, and that they not only become dependent on public funding, on European national funding, but actually increasingly on private funding, private investment, that the private investors, venture capitalists, business angels see a big potential in them. They see clear marketable products, and then they make profit. It's all, at the end of the day, it's about making money. In this context, making profit. So it's important. So that's why clusters offer those favorable ecosystems to grow, for the startups to grow, to scale up. And another aspect, what we mentioned, what Ilona also mentioned about heterogeneity. So in the Baltic region, we have heterogeneity in terms of different actors, but also in different sectors. And here it's a big potential for innovation. So we say innovation is not always new. It does not need to be totally new idea. It's also about applying innovation from one sector to a different sector. And then you have this disruptive effect, what I was talking, innovation from aerospace sector applied to medtech sector. And this is this is how you create new products, new services, new technologies, and this is where our European competitive advantage lie, because of our proximity. And also this is what clusters are about. It's one aspect. And the third aspect, and I promise it's going to be last, it's about also building on the cooperation, on the trust. So across not only sectors, but also across borders, we're Europe. You know, this is our big strength. We are relatively close to one another, and we can really bring those innovations from one region, from one country to another, and particularly in the Baltic regions, you work so brilliantly together from what I see. You have such a fantastic solutions. Do not reinvent the wheel, build upon this wheel and grow more. So that's my message.
That's
cooperate more. Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you. So let's jump to Germany and Lars. It's also interesting because Germany itself is the largest economy in Europe, still and also a small, medium-sized city, and you are part of the German part of the Baltic Sea region. Also.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But give me the chance to come back to the issue of clusters, and then I think we'll come also to the question of Germany economic power, because it's not only about cluster. These companies exist physically. They need an environment where they can be located or where they are historically located, and I think that is one important aspect when we talk about small and medium-sized towns. Partly like the hidden champions in Germany, they are mostly located traditionally in locations where the entrepreneurs started. And these are partly also small cities or towns in the peripheral areas. So there's nothing against say that peripheral areas or small towns are not attractive. They are not attractive for everyone. And it must. What also is important in Germany, and a lot of city governments and companies now learned, they have to educate the people. They have to start in schools. But what is really important is, I think that was a good example, the last we heard, to establish a common sense about a city. You have not to love your city, but you have to have a feeling for your city. It's nice to live in the city, and when you have this feeling, then you will get into these participations. We had a lot of examples today about people who participated in processes to get a vision, to get a strategy for their town. And I think that is very important. That is also very important for the companies, so that they have a stable environment where people are happy where they live, where they can feel good, where they can live with their families. And so one key issue is the participation of the people in these cities, to get them the feeling that they can participate in the process, that they can change their city in a positive way. And now you would like to know something about Germany and the economic power.
Not just that your economic power, but because we're also facing this challenge, I think one thing is that Baltic Sea region is not equal. It has high disparities internally, as we have discussed here. Germany itself is also, we have big cities, we have small cities, and what is more interesting for this discussion, you are also being part of this great place which is called Baltic Sea region.
Yeah, and the internal differences in Germany coming to small and medium-sized cities are huge. It depends on the federal states, and also historically it's different. So when we are coming to Schleswig-Holstein and Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, which are part of WASAP, you can see historically that there are not very huge cities. And we have one extreme example in Germany being part of Schleswig-Holstein. It has around 20,000 inhabitants, but a surface of 600 square kilometers. So it's not only that in Germany a small town is always very compact and you can reach every place very good. That we have, especially in this area of Germany in the northeast, similar structures with dispersed population and small cities, like you have it in Finland or in Norway or in Latvia.
But it's just initiative of locals, or it's part of Germany's national policy, regional policy? This is small and medium-sized cities, like, do you have special role in your national policy for them?
Yes, and I was wondering a little bit when Anne this morning gave his presentation, and he said Finland was forgetting over 20 years the small towns in Finland, and we had the same discussions. Thinking of the time when I started working for BBSR, we talked about metropolitan areas like the engines of economy, and we totally forget that we have the small and medium-sized enterprises in the small towns and the medium-sized towns. There is innovation, and they do not only cooperate with the next town, they cooperate with India, with United States and everything, some countries. It's now, today in Germany, different. Since 10 years we have a special program. We have this Urban Development Assistance Program has a longer history since the 70s, but since 2010 we have a special program for small and medium-sized towns in Germany, and it has a funding around 400 million euros, and around 700 cities participate. And there is a part of politicians note that that small cities exist, but we have to admit also that we started 5 years ago with research on small cities, because even in BBSR, in our federal office, we did not investigate on small towns and what happened there. We always said, yeah, small towns, not even small towns, small and medium towns was one class of city for us, and always they are in the rural areas, and that is wrong. Small towns are specific part of town or city. They are not equal to medium-sized cities, and also they are not equal depending where are they located. In Germany, we thought a long time, yeah, the small and medium-sized towns are in rural areas, there is decline, aging, all these problems we heard about today. But we have a lot of small towns located in growth areas, and they have the total different problems to the ones located in peripheral areas. They have to change, they have to force now constructing infrastructure, housing, real estate for business, for industry, because the pressure is so high.
Depends on which kind of, let's say, network you are or functional area. If you are part of large metropolitan, in one case, one type of challenge is not.
Yeah. And therefore, today we know much more about the small cities, the differences, and also the government in this coalition commitment or treaty, they announced very clearly the small and medium-sized towns as one topic they have to work on, because I think they also know that these towns are robust. They are the columns of the robust polycentric system we have in Germany.
Okay, thank you. So pretty much focus on the small and medium-sized towns. Yeah,
yes, when we talk about, if I can add on small and medium-sized enterprises in small and medium-sized cities, many of you that come from businesses, you know that often small and medium-sized enterprises lack human resources. You know, it's really difficult to have one person dedicated to find strategic partnership, to have access to funding, to know who are the partners. You know, it's a huge cost for a company. You know, company just wants to make profit, you know, to survive basically. So that's why you really need, I would say, from 3C to 3S, you need the SME intermediary who can help you to scale up, to have the scale, scope, and also have a long-term strategy. So here again, why clusters come into the picture, because it's a bottom-up process. You know, it's the SMEs together jointly, 10, 20, 100, 200, as in Germany you have some clusters that have 200 SMEs together. They just set up a legal entity, which is a cluster organization, representing needs, their interest, and this is the organization that helps to tap into the European value chains, help to find partners, resources, export, import, innovate more, and this is and also help to the long-term strategy, the vision. How do you see yourself in 5, in 10 years? Because often those SMEs, that particularly startups, they're just brilliant. Yes, I have a great idea. Let me sell it. You know, that's good. You know, they're very driven. You know, but they don't see themselves how they fit within the whole market, and that's why you need this kind of mentor, I would say. So I would see here the cluster role as a mentor, and also particularly a stronger cluster. We see from a stronger cluster from Germany, helping maybe a growing, increasing cluster of SMEs in Latvia. And we could also see the same kind of mentorship program even when our countries were joining European Union, here the EU 10, then 13, we also had the mentors from the Western Europe. So here, again, you know, build up on this example of exchange of good practice, of learning from each other and building on. So to having the strategic partnerships across Europe. Thank you. This is the message.
Yeah, thank you.
I was decided with you, and then I will be in opposition before our discussion round table. But quite friendly, I would like to say, I'm working for the city administration quite a long time. And I was also part of the person who was invited a number of companies in the town. But I would like to say there is a changes in thinking. We had a time when I'm calling Fordism time. The companies were thinking only about simple things. Do you have enough gas? Do you have water? Do you have any facility, and how cheap it is? Nowadays, I think the investment and also the companies who are investing in small and medium-sized cities is having another priorities. And I would like to say today, the small and medium-sized cities in the Baltic Sea region, and I guess also in Europe, is not fighting more for investors, but more fighting for brains for people who are living in a town. And of course, those skilled people need a little bit different things, like in Fordism time. Because in Fordism time, what do you need? Just only a flat, working in an office for 24 hours, and back. Nowadays, ladies are willing to have more free time, playing on the beach, for example, in Liepa, you're welcome. Need a fast internet access and quality of life. And therefore, I would like to say for next planning period for the EU, I think we have to think a little bit differently. Of course, we may discuss about digital economy, but I'm spending a lot of time to asking, what does it mean, digital economy? And also, I think also 5 of you who are sitting here will have a different opinion of what does it mean. But my belief is we have to orientate mostly for small and medium-sized city environment. Parks, squares, housing, fast internet, and education. Education and education. Therefore, I would like to say the evolution is started. We are on a post-Fordism period now.
Okay, human capital is a central part, but Gunnar, continuing with Latvia and maybe from Vasab also, do you feel like eastern part, Baltic countries, and also to Zamara continuing, how do you feel as a part of Baltic Sea region? Are you part of network or is something missing? Because we were starting about the building of trust, being part of bigger clusters, so how do you feel that Liepa is part of?
When my colleague Anna was mentioning, there is a white spot in the Baltic regarding clusters. Therefore, we are missing some elements. But I would like to say, for example, my city will trying always be more international city because we was forced to do. Because city of Liepa was a closed town for decades. It was military part in it. It's the biggest Navy base, I don't know, maybe in Wall, but not, it was a joke. The city itself was not marked in a map. Therefore, we was pushed to have this international cooperation. We start with this partnership cities because we was forced to bring a knowledge to the town. And I still remember the first consultations from SWECO or from different Scandinavian companies under the CEDA program. The support of Germany, we started the first innovation of housing. But nowadays, I would like to say, for example, Tartu is a brilliant city with knowledge, with university, and with skills and practice. And I think there is also some good things also in Liepa and in Riga, and we heard also Sigulda is a brilliant city today. Therefore, I would like to say we are part of the Baltic, but individually we are thinking we are not. For example, if we are going to election for EU Parliament, we are saying we are going for election for a different country. In
It's mine. Yeah, it's mine. Okay, but Union of Baltic Cities, mine.
Yeah. Union of Baltic Cities, it's a network of cities in the Baltic Sea region, and together they are around 100, 100 member cities. And this Union of Baltic Cities has founded in early 90s to reduce differences between western part and eastern part, and to exchange experiences. But now I can tell that there are many fields where still we more eastern cities, yes, we still learn from others, but as well we have many fields where we can teach and we can exchange our knowledge, and other they have things to learn from us. Yes,
Learning by doing. It
yeah,
sounds.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that is how we work also in our planning commission. Yes.
Okay, Lars.
I would like to add one thing we learned the last years when we worked with 8 cities, small cities in Germany, and that's sure intercommunal cooperation or connecting with other cities and other countries, teaching the politicians and the administrations. But what I see as a fundamental point is you mentioned education, and it's education surely in schools, but educating also the people in other fields like digitalization, gives them the possibility to learn, to try, to make experiments, trial and error, how to use the digital world, how is planning going on. Give also the people in the small towns the possibility, because you don't have a big administration, and you see in Sigult and other countries, or Tartu, that you can achieve a lot if you include the public, if you include the civil society, and maybe they won't tell you something about 3D printing or something, but they will tell you exactly something about their location and how they would like to see it in the future. And therefore I think it's very important also to educate the civil society, or the entrepreneurs, or who is part of the civil society, and not only the government, the administration, or the politicians.
In the first part of this conference, I was thinking how to transfer these big political aims to these local activities. And from my point of view, these networks and network of city as UBC, that is one of solution. Yes, but to exchange this knowledge and to send it to specialists to discuss between different specialists level or political level.
Because what we were discussing here a couple of minutes ago, actually, this problem which faces small and medium-sized companies with resources and also the knowledge. The same is also with the small and medium-sized cities, with the knowledge in general. So it's not only about the sharing the knowledge from one place to another, but also about concentrating resources on some things to networking. And what was by the Lars mentioning, this digitalization, it's also, I think, the way how you can trigger this cooperation in one topic, actually. Yeah, Jan, you also have something?
Yeah, just few comments on this. I think it's a question of networking capabilities that has, and of course the small and medium-sized cities, they also have less resources for networking, so they have the ability to read the networks that are most important ones, the themes that are most supportive for your economic development, for your clusters in your city. And then it's kind of a rough policy that you have to choose. The small and medium-sized cities, they don't have the luxury of being in a total huge amount of different networks, but they have to choose in which networks they are and in which themes they are cooperating. And that is networking capabilities that you have to build there.
Anna?
No, but you was mentioning your concept of thinking before a conference how to achieve those political aims from national government to local government, right? And I think yesterday we had a wonderful opportunity to discuss Lithuanian proposal for national development plan. And I think you cannot have expertise in all fields.
Yeah.
You cannot be sportsman in a box.
All these things, yeah.
You cannot be playing tennis well, and probably basketball.
Yes.
Yeah. Therefore, I would like to say also hockey.
And ice
as well,
hockey in
yeah.
this region, Baltic Sea region.
And therefore, I think I would like to say for the hardest point for the small and medium-sized cities is to choose which sport we are playing for, which we are good, because everybody is saying, okay, there is, for example, Liepaja Porziņģis is playing well basketball. There is Anastasia Ostapenko. She was born in Liepaja, and Sevastova is playing on the top. And we have to create the infrastructure for this. And of course, it's cost. But coming back to the national strategies, for example, in Latvia, I don't know how many we have, probably 400 different strategies in IT, in digitalization, in public transportation, regional development, and I can count number of this. And I think also for small and medium-sized cities is very important to understand what the country is willing to do, because in all sport segments,
it's more about
they
concentration.
cannot do.
Yeah, you have to concentrate.
Yeah.
But with the strategies, I can agree. We can fit with the two strategies: national, regional development, and Liepaja city strategy.
Yeah, this we already agreed.
Yeah, it could be enough for Latvia. Yeah, but continue with the ladies. Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to compliment what Gunnar was saying.
Use Porsche.
Use Porsche. Yeah, I just wanted to compliment what Gunnar was saying about specialization versus diversification of the economic development base, of the innovation base. From our perspective of what we have studied within ESPON, we see quite clearly that developing excellence requires you to specialize. At the same time, promoting and sustaining resilience makes you diversify. So the question is, how do you combine both specialization and diversification? And this is why we are very strongly advocating for developing this economic innovation ecosystem and promoting economic development, looking at broader geographical scales that allows you then for different places to specialize in certain field, and at the same time by working together to ensure a resilient economic and diversified economic development base that can also lead you to a stronger potential.
Yeah, it sounds like insurance policy networking. Yeah, but Anna first.
If I may add on that point, we talk about specialization, and of course, from the policy making perspective, and particularly now, since we're already looking at post-2020, talking about smart specialization strategies, and those are very crucial because those are exactly about building upon the strengths and advantages and of a particular region. And here in this context, do identify what are your strengths. So as you probably very familiar with entrepreneurial discovery process. So this is the bottom up. You invite various stakeholders from your region, in this context, middle size small cities, and you see, okay, what are your needs? Like, what are you good at? What do you want to develop? And this is this participatory process that we are really very much now putting emphasis on. And based on these ideas that come up from this entrepreneurial discovery process of different stakeholders, you adapt the strategy according, again, to the needs. So it's, again, I'm coming back to having this tailored based approach. So instead of squaring the circle, you know, you really say, okay, this is where we should specialize in because this is where our strengths. So, you know, if you're, what about the sports, you know, if you need to have a certain already, you know, skills to go into specific sport. I'm tall, so almost everybody thinks that I'm good in basketball. It doesn't mean I am, but you know, that's usually a thing that that you know people should be looking in to be competitive. So that's the smart specialization. In this context, I make a little publicity. What we do at DG Grow, and for those of you who do not know, it's Director General responsible for internal market, entrepreneurship, industry, and small and medium enterprises of the European Commission. And there we put forward a thematic platform on smart specialization concentrated specifically on industrial modernization, where we have 20 different partnerships, which means that different regions across Europe get together and they work on their common regional innovation strategies, so smart specialization strategies. And that's also important. I think there's a big potential here in the Baltic region to work more, because when you look at the map, I did not show this map as well, I see there is a big potential here for you to get more engaged, to exchange good practices, and to learn even more, to become even more competitive and specialize and build up on your strengths, on your excellence, because that's what we're also striving for. Thank you.
Also, not putting everything on one card. You can't
Diversify
be, yeah, you
portfolio.
have to diversify, and that's why
portfolio.
this networking could help. It wasn't a joke about the insurance policy, but it's actually, it works like that, because then you can use your potential resources with yeah. But Lars,
I think what is very interesting when we compare a bit your strategies or your thinking about economy clusters, that you need a strategy, that you have to think about your strengths, your weaknesses, your potentials. I mean, in general, I don't like to adapt concepts for an economy for cities, but in this field, I think cities have to go also such a way they have to see where are the weaknesses, where are the strengths, where are the potentials. Often potentials are the historical paths they have in economy, in industry, and I think that was very obvious in Tampere and Tartu. And there, I didn't see there a totally specialization in one topic, but you had historical paths like Nokia, or a mining industry, like gaming industry, and that fits good together. Or in Tampere, in Tartu, we have medicine and aviation, and it works. And in this field, I think it's also important that you need to know which is your core competence, but that it's not too small to fail, because I come originally from the rural area, and I knew how it is to have only 2 columns, steel and mining, and then when it's over, it's dead. No.
we have had many cases, I think, in Latvia as well as in Europe and the world, actually, when you have historically one industry, then it's dying, and you have to have something instead of that, and usually you have diverse of things, and then runs much faster things which are globally demanded. But maybe, yeah.
One thing I would like to add, because of your network and what you are doing with the clusters, we try to install now in Germany a so-called small town academy, where we would like to work together with everyone, with politicians, researchers, business, with the local people, and how what are good strategies for small cities to develop. Yeah, and I hope it will work well, but we try to establish such a thing, especially to do the same a little bit like in economy, to bring the people together to share knowledge, to get a better knowledge base.
Okay, thank you. The last word to Gunnars, maybe, as a WhatsApp. Or Elon wanted to, no? Because, yeah. Is Liepa ready for next decade? You heard a lot of things to do, so everything is have to do.
You know, right now we are trying to find a way of city development, because the development program is open, and therefore we are going in different conferences, in different meetings, just to find our way because definitely our aim is to the city, but financially sound, which is, I would like to say, also a very important issue. Then, for example, if I'm studying city development strategies in 110 cities, which is in UBC network, in fact, they are having all the same strategy: tourism development, accessibility, culture, education, etc. In fact, 10 priorities is having all city. But of course, it's very important to connect those priorities with investment plans and programs, which sometimes is, I would like to say, one of the difficulties cases for the city development. But I have to conclude also discussion with fact that not only small and medium-sized cities, but inhabitants who are living in a city, like you was mentioning, is playing sometimes maybe very important role. Yesterday we discussed about your name. His name is Porsche. I would like to say he have a privileged card in all discussions with potential investors. Thank you very much indeed for these discussions. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you indeed. Also, thank you all for discussing. Sorry for fast track, but the main thing, so let's continue networking, learning, and doing for success. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are almost finished with our event, and thank you very much for all of our panelists, and also thank you, Raivis, for leading this discussion. Just a couple of things I wanted to say before we jump in the final words from Inguna. All presentations of this conference will be available online after this event, so they will be published on WhatsApp webpage or the ministry webpage. You will be followed up definitely by the conference organizers, so don't worry about that. Then I would like to remind you about the workshop, which will take place after lunchtime, so it will start at 3 p.m. And the name of the workshop is Workshop on Territorial Scenarios for Baltic Sea Region for 2050. Then once again, thank you for all the speakers that participated today in the first two parts, and once again for the panelists, that you found the time to come here to this event and share your stories with us. Also, thank you for all the conference organizers, and particularly to the Ministry of Regional Development and Environmental Protection and Regional Development, as well as the Nordic Council of Ministers office in Latvia, without whom this also wouldn't be possible. And then I hope that you all at least had one thing that after this event, when you will go home, that you will think about it and you will be able to adapt it and implement it in your own small or medium-sized city or region or whichever institution you are working on. So now I would like to invite Inguna Urtane from the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development of the Republic of Latvia to give a closing word for this conference.
So it will not be easy because so many things are said today. But as we concluding our presidency as a in a WhatsApp cooperation as a country, and yeah, we were those who initiated this discussion. We already had two events before, and so I will try to be short because I think we should conclude it in written in a more comprehensive way. But what was important to me, and I think we maybe could agree on that when I yesterday asked Lars, what can you define the small and medium-sized city, and he told me that there is no short answer to that question. And I would say is that there is also no short answer on what is the best strategy to develop, to become from the small to bigger. But what's important to know is that every city has a chance to grow, that we can learn from the past, as the Minister of Transportation encouraged us with the story of the railway station. Yeah, and what is important to know is that we are facing the same challenges, those global megatrends affecting us in equal way in the whole Baltic region, and we have to think of how to deal with these challenges. The second one is it's good to know that the small and medium-sized towns will remain the backbone of the EU urban structure. That's good to know. So it helps you to be and encourage.
And then we have to think of what Ilona said about the quality of governments, that the good governments always can lead to good investment. That's very important to remember. The governments which could be better. There is always room for improvement, especially for those small and medium-sized towns where there are several times were mentioned that they are lacking in-house capacity to develop the strategies, and therefore those examples from Denmark and from Finland and from Germany was so important to know that there should be different types of how to start with the things to improve these governments. There should be bottom-up and top-down different types of action should be taken. And what is the last one I would say is that we should think beyond the borders. It's also we should think of functional regions. We should stop to think of these rural-urban divides. That's also a very important message, and it's not easy from the government's point of view. So, yeah, so that's our opportunity and challenge. So I would like to say thank you so much for coming today to be with us, and especially I would like to thank you all of those presenters, because we saw how different and diverse solutions we can find if we just start to act. So I hope you the best, and thank you for coming.